Hey, I don't have any Noodler's pens around.
Oh.
Oh.
That was a low blow, Drew.
Well. Yeah, no, nothing else. I have some mint. I have some mint tea. I have some coffee. Other than that, I think that the odors are pleasant for now.
For now.
For now. Who knows what could happen?
All right. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. Let's do it.
Let's do what?
The Pencast.
Okay, that's fine.
Ready?
Good. Just checking. Hey, man, I don't know what you mean.
That's all right.
All right.
Welcome, everyone, to episode number 30. That is 30 of the Goulet Pencast, where fountain pens are still a thing. I am Brian Goulet.
I am Drew Brown.
Yeah, you are. And we're here from Goulet Pens to deliver this casual and informal, tangential and extraneous, superfluous and extemporaneous fountain pen show, where we talk about what's going on at the Goulet Pen Company and in our fountain pen lives. In today's show, we're going to talk about bullet journaling. I'm turning into Casey Kasem here. Tomoe River paper alternatives and custom grinds, including small italic nibs, among other things. We have a lot of disparate topics to discuss today. And speaking of disparate topics, we have some feedback to kick things off. Drew, what do we have from Alex?
Well, Alex, among others, had some response to last week's discussion about the odoriferous nature of Noodler's pens.
Oh, okay.
Alex says, now get ready, I happen to like the smell of Noodler's pens. It just seems to make my throat feel a little weird. So Alex, perhaps if smelling a pen
makes your throat feel weird.
I am no medical professional.
Maybe to take a test. Take an at-home test on that one.
I don't profess to be an expert on absolutely anything, but maybe don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Or bring it in, consult a doctor, be like, Doc, smell this. Is this bad? Should I be? Makes my throat feel weird. Should I keep smelling it?
Yeah.
Let's see what he does.
You know the dad joke, Drew, about I went to the doctor and I said, Doctor, it hurts every time I do this, and the doctor said, well, stop doing that.
Yeah. I think I've heard something like that before.
It's not a gut buster.
No, like the my eye hurts every time I drink tea. Oh, we'll take the spoon out. You've heard that one? Yeah, there you go.
I haven't heard that one, actually.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
No, it's not. No,
I like that.
It's not good.
I like that. You made me smile, Drew.
No.
Look at the pleasure you're bringing to my face.
Stop it.
Come on.
Ugh, I feel dirty. All right. But there were a lot of comments about how the Noodler's pen smell wasn't necessarily a bad smell. It just was a smell.
So
a lot of folks actually said...
They're in my camp.
Yeah, well, a lot of folks actually said it smelled nostalgic, reminded them of like their grandmother's plastic wrapped sofa and things like that. So,
you know what it smells like, Drew?
Tell me.
It smells like old screwdriver handles. You ever have
Why are you sniffing old screwdriver handles, Brian Goulet?
I mean, why aren't you sniffing old screwdriver handles? No, my dad had like old screwdrivers from like his dad and like super old. It's because cellulose butyrate, which is that material, that was what was used because it's very shock absorbent. It's very durable. It was one of the earlier, cellulose derivative plastics that was available in like the, early mid 1900s. So it is a nostalgic smell. I agree. Yeah.
There were probably a multitude of grandparent era accessories made from this stuff. So you're not alone. You're not alone.
There you go.
But there were a lot of very poetic descriptions of the Noodler's smell, and I enjoyed reading them, so thank you. A22 Lottie says, just want to thank Drew for putting out that tip last week. This was a tip of the week about how to carefully and a little dangerously open up your fountain pen nib tines to increase flow. Lottie says, I have a pen that was hard starting and skipping a ton, which led to it just not being used. So today I figured I'd give the tip a shot, and wow. Granted, I had to flex the tines more than 3 times, but the flow has improved so much. It's now writing under very near its own weight, so I don't have to apply any noticeable pressure when I use it. I'm happy. And to prove that this person was happy, there is a happy emoji. So you know it's true.
Well, that seals it right there.
So I thought that was delightful. That was really
awesome.
great to hear.
That's
Thank you,
literally
Lottie.
exactly what the tip was given for, was to have that exact experience. That's very cool.
Certainly was. And then finally, our friend Florence says, okay, I have to ask, what's that green thing on your back wall, Drew? And apart from my video game characters, yes, I have...
It's boogers.
I have this little thing.
Dry boogers.
It is Kermit. It is a Kermit the Frog emoji keychain.
Cute.
And I used to have, for one time, I was trying to play around with grinding nibs, and I had like a little grindy thing over there. Obviously not grinding anything we ever sold, just for my own practice and amusement, hanging on this little clip. And I didn't like that clip just not doing a job. So I had a little Kermit keychain. I'm like, you know what? He's going to hang over there. So totally random and not necessary, but
nice.
The clip gets to do its job.
Cool story, bro. All right. This is from Cap Mium, or I can't tell if that's an L or a capital I, but anyway, Cap Mium, we'll say.
Wham.
We need a caricature artist to render a drawing of Drew as Goose from Top Gun, offering a toothbrush to Brian's Maverick in a shark suit, making it rain Waffle House gift cards. What an oddly specific image. Plus, we cannot forget the impending tidal wave of bowling balls in the background.
Brian, how much of this do you remember us talking about from last episode?
Okay, I remember the Top Gun references.
You do? See, I don't remember the Top Gun reference. I remember the bowling balls.
I think. I actually... gosh, now that I think about it, like the Top Gun was like, oh yeah, Top Gun. But I'm actually now not recalling the toothbrush thing, because we talked about that a lot.
Right, definitely the toothbrush.
You want to sell a toothbrush?
But we definitely mentioned all... Yeah, where's the shark suit come from? I know that we must have mentioned all this because...
We clearly have. Well, Cap, you clearly have a better memory than we do. We don't know what nonsense is coming out of our mouth. But...
yeah, I definitely said something about a tidal wave of bowling balls to describe my... the I don't know, something about my passion for the toothbrush idea.
Okay. I missed that one. I missed that one.
We say a lot of things, and that's what I love about this comment, Brian, because it's just like it kind of just reminds us of the malarkey that comes out of our mouths every episode.
Yeah.
So
most of what we say can be ignored. You know, just have it in the background as you're taking out the trash or washing the dishes or weeding your garden or whatever, and just you don't really need to pay that close attention to any of it.
Oh goodness.
Lynn says, wait, Brian, have you entered the French drain method debate on YouTube, perforated versus PVC? Oh, yes, it's a lively debate. As with anything.
Are you being serious?
People, oh yeah. Like, should you use PVC pipe versus a corrugated pipe? Mm-hmm. And there are camps where they're adamant about one way or the other. The thing I'll say about any home improvement related thing that you see on the internet is the answer is you might be right and you might be wrong, because it's going to vary a lot based on your climate, your local area, your local restrictions, and building codes and all that type of stuff. So yeah.
If it's PVC, how does water get in it?
Like it's got holes. So you have
okay.
Holes.
So PVC versus hold versus corrugated with holes.
Corrugated versus like a knife cut corrugated. So you can get corrugated that's got holes in it, or you can get it where it's just got little like knife like slits in it and stuff like that. Yeah, it's just like anything else. You can nerd out, and there's way too much information about all these things. But if anyone cares, I'm using corrugated pipe because I have a lot of angles and turns and things to make, and I don't feel like dealing with.
All right, PVC. Brian's in that camp.
But
consider him firmly entrenched.
Oh, yes. I picked up on that immediately, Drew. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That feeds my soul. I think I just gained like 3 days of my life with that comment. God. That's pretty awesome. Yep. So that's happening, but we've had bad weather and stuff. So I have made almost no progress on the French drain. Now it's a French pit. It's an open pit that water is falling into, and it's like 1.5 feet deep. And if I drive my car off the edge, I'll probably have to get a tow truck to get it out. So that's would not be good. So Rachel's like, "Can you finish this thing, please?" And I'm like, "I will, as soon as it's not snowing and 17 degrees outside. So we'll see, because that's quite literally what it's calling for this weekend. So I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, no one cares. Next on to Micah. So what I am getting is that Brian's brain has 2 primary modes. Oh boy, I haven't read these in advance. I don't know, I just like it. And let me deep dive research and explained every nuance from every angle for 30 minutes regarding this subject. Yeah, Micah, you're not too wrong about that one. Yeah, pretty good. Yeah, I don't know how to explain it, but I just like your comment. I just do. So
well done.
Move on. And last one is from Diana. Now you have to make a ghost sticker. The unfinished business. The ink stains all over its white ghost sheets. I can see it.
You know what this is in reference to, right?
I have no idea. What is this?
This was when, remember, you it was one of the funniest things from last episode. We were talking about pen cleaning, of course, and you said, I'll clean my pens when I'm dead.
Oh, yeah.
And then,
That's
and then
right.
I was like, wait, you can't do that. And then we just started going off on this tangent about how you're going to come back as a ghost and because you have unfinished business.
That's right. Okay.
And I think that our friend Crystal also said that it was like the most random idea for a horror film ever conceived, but she would definitely buy tickets for it.
Yes. That would be you'd have to really stretch to make that something worth seeing. Oh my gosh. I feel like the theme of this week's feedback was, do Brian and Drew pay attention to anything that they talk about?
I remember some of it.
But I feel like we did really bad.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Anyway. All right. Let's move it along. New stuff. All right. So we do have some new things. It's starting to trickle in. So that's kind of cool. So if you check gouletpens.com, you can look at new arrivals. You can look at coming soon. And there will be some slightly more interesting things there than there have been in previous weeks. So that's cool. First thing I want to talk about is the Ritma carbon fiber. Or as Drew typed in the notes here, Ritman. That's what it says. It's the
I did. It's the Ritman.
It's the Ritman. The Monteverde Ritma. So we've had this in. It's actually been a surprising, maybe not surprisingly popular pen. It's been a popular pen. We didn't think it would be as popular as it has become because it's a magnetic snap cap. It's a straight barrel. We didn't know how people would jive with that. Smooth grip, metal grip. So it's got some things that's like, I don't know, maybe not everybody's favorite components, but I mean, the pen's been very popular and it writes really well too. So anyway, they're doing a 2022 pen of the year, which looks slick. I mean, it's carbon fiber with a gloss finish. This is like what Monteverde does. Like, they are known for this. They did their first carbon fiber pen over 20 years ago. And so that's pretty cool that they brought it to the Ritma. And gunmetal trim, black nib. It looks really slick, really stealthy. Definitely has that kind of sleek, like, that industrial kind of like, like people who are into like cars and stuff like that. Like, there's a lot of carbon fiber and gunmetal, like that kind of thing. It's got that kind of vibe. $52 for the pen. You can get it extra fine through 1.1 plus the Omniflex nib if you want that. And it's the special edition. So I imagine they'll have it around for a year or so. I don't know exactly how many they're making. I don't think they're numbered or anything. I think it's just, the pen's here, and they'll keep it around for a little bit. But it's a slick looking pen, gotta say.
Slick and sleek.
Sleek.
And slick and
sleek. And slick and sleek. Yep. Exactly. And then got another one from Montegrappa, the Zero Samba. So this is a U.S. exclusive, or North American U.S. exclusive. Not sure if it's all of North America or just U.S., but either way, we're in the U.S., so we have access to it. So it's got a number 6 Yovo nib, steel nib. This is the Zero is a pen that's been around for a couple of years. We have not carried many of them, because it's kind of a niche thing, but it's a U.S. exclusive. We thought the color was kind of neat, so we thought we'd offer it. So it's, the Samba color. It's like this dark green. It's got a really cool kind of, I guess you call it a pattern. It's not really a texture. It's all smooth, but it's got like a lot of interesting color, kind of striated.
Striations?
Striations, yeah, through the material. It's really neat. It's different than your average, kind of acrylic material. It just looks different.
I believe
It's really
they make
kinda
this
cool.
at Monograppa.
I think that, yeah, this is a custom material that only they have, which
Yeah,
is
it's their stuff.
pretty cool. And that's part, it's a little higher price, but it's inspired by precision timepieces. So it has like a crystal bezel or bezel. I don't know my
I think so,
watch
yeah.
terms. The bezel, that's the clear part that you look through, right? Or is the bezel
Well,
the
no,
angled-
the
bezel's
bezel-
the metal part? Yeah.
No, the bezel is the
That's the
dial
ring
thing.
around that. Oh gosh, I'm showing how much I
Yeah.
don't know about these things. But anyway,
the case,
if you,
the bezel,
if you know more than me about watches, you may be into this pen. So it looks pretty cool. It's got the newer Monograppa logo down in there underneath the crystal. It's pretty slick. So that'll be there. And then we have a new video, which is reviving an old classic. We had the top 7 pens to last a lifetime. We are refreshing it, coming out with some new pens that are coming out on that list. So look for that one. Yeah, should be out, right? Didn't we publish it?
yeah, it's out.
Today?
It's published.
Yay! It's out.
The
Wednesday.
Zero features a sapphire glass set in a miniature bezel.
Bezel. Okay, the bezel is
So-
the part that holds the glass. Yeah, it's usually like
Yeah.
the angled part of the around the face of the watch.
Yeah, the ring, I guess.
There's a way better way to explain it with probably accurate technical terms. I just don't know what they are.
You said
So,
the right things, though. Yeah.
I was in the right zone, maybe. I don't know. Let's end this and move on to Drew. Drew, you have some things to talk about.
Hey! The Peniter Back to the Future pen, which is a crazy unique pen, is getting a bit of a sequel. Not quite Back to the Future 2 with pink hoverboards and stuff, but black trim, which is, the next best thing. So the already unique Back to the Future with its kind of stacked carbon look and really unique capping and posting situation is now available in black trim. Previously, it was only available in the kind of silver color trim. So if you just want a whole blacked out Back to the Future, this is your pen.
Yeah.
It's going to be available at $766.40.
Nice. And it
Also-
I was going to say it comes packaged with a giant book that's all about Italian art and is only in Italian. So that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, honestly,
it looks really neat.
It does look really cool. Hop over to the product page and read more about it because there is a lot to read about the
Yeah.
inspiration about this pen and all of the, there's a lot of inspiration. This pen was made with a lot of intentionality. And,
That's the whole theme of like the Back to the Future is talking about like going back to like the art history kind of thing that was happening in
like the
Italy and Europe
40s.
and yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're into that kind of vibe, it's a futuristic looking pen that looks back at the past with art history, that kind of thing. That's the whole vibe. We're explaining it terribly. I feel like we're really off to a rough start on the Pencast today, and mostly my
I feel
fault.
great.
Drew's done great. I'm feeling great. I'm just not using words well.
You're doing great, Brian.
Thanks,
you look
Drew.
fantastic. I'm just loving the light blue. Just the
yeah, you like that? You
Teal,
like the hair?
teal
Yeah.
on teal. No,
This
no,
is
I don't
my
like the hair.
This is.
I think that you should. I have it on good authority that the receding look is in.
Oh, really? Is that the case?
I've been told. Yeah, I've been told every day. I look in the mirror and somebody tells me it looks great.
It has been said
Yeah,
that that's
it has
the
been
look.
said. Studies have
Yes,
shown.
that's right. Studies. That's right.
All right, and we've got 2 new Auroras coming down the pipeline. The successor to the, or not a successor. Anyway, the next in the Trilobiti series, which is a demonstrator Aurora 88 with colored trim. So the first one was a brown demonstrator 88, and this one is going to be a blue demonstrator 88, and it looks really
I
neat.
think
So
is-
the blue is a nice matte blue, including the nib.
I would say that's a substantial upgrade in color
You-
from the previous version.
Are not correct. The brown, they wanted to start off strong. And and they have that. We wouldn't even be paying attention to this if that brown didn't come first. So let's throw some respect on that. That one's going to be $895.50, and then moving up in price range a little bit, we've got the Aurora Ambiente Tropic. So this is the 4th color in the Ambiente series, following the Glacier, the Jungle, and the what was the other one?
Coral.
No, this is Coral. Let's see,
Tropic.
hold on.
No.
Tundra.
There you go.
So we had 3 before. This is 4th. And speaking of coral, Brian, all of these pens have an engraved grip section with like a little symbol for the environment that they are inspired by. The Tropic, the new one, actually has a nice branch of coral engraved into it. The Jungle has a leaf. The Glacier has an iceberg, and the Tundra has a small little baby tree. They're all really cute, but the pen itself is just, you hold it, and what I like about these, Brian, is that it has that feel. Like when you hold one of these Ambiente pens, it doesn't feel like a pen. You're like, oh yes, well this piece comes with this sort of trim. You want to call it a piece. And when pens kind of have this like this weighty prestige to them, it no longer is just like it's a pen. It's like, oh yeah, yes, we have 8 pieces of these, and this piece features a blank. You just want to say piece for some reason. Does that ever happen to you? It happens to me for sure. It's like a piece. It's like a museum quality thing.
Yeah, like how they call watches timepieces. So if you call a watch a timepiece, what would you call a pen then? What piece is a pen? Is it like a writing piece?
It's a writing piece, yeah.
That sounds weird.
Yeah. It does. That's why we don't say it. But anyway, that one is $1,165.50. So it is up there. But these pens aren't going to be around forever. And if you take a look at them, you will see a lot of beautiful sterling silver trim, as well as some gorgeous colors and unique engravings, as we said. So definitely something to take a peek at, even if you're not ready to take the plunge. It's pretty.
It is pretty.
And that's it for new stuff.
Yes, it is indeed. There will be more. There'll be more new things, but this is all we have to talk about today.
That's right.
Tell you what we are going to talk about next, though, is some Q&A questions. And we have a pretty random assortment. No central theme, really, of any kind on today's. No. But yeah. So, Drew, I think you get to ask the first one, and I get to answer.
I'm going to ask you a question. This question comes to us from Noah C. Tench. And Noah asks, well, he just says, I've heard lots about bullet journaling. What is it?
What is it?
What is bullet journaling?
With a capital is.
What is it?
Yeah, so we are not like bullet journaling experts, but we know enough to be dangerous. I feel like I can safely explain what it is.
I know enough to really appreciate everybody else doing it, because I can't.
Yeah, like most things, we don't really know what we're talking about, but we can at least point you to other people who know what they're actually talking about. So yeah, first off, I'll say there's lots of YouTube channels who like really focus on bullet journaling. So if you are just already on YouTube, just literally type in bullet journal and you'll find more than you can handle about ways to do the method and different inspirational things that people do with it, but I'll explain the basics of it. So I think at its essence, it's a personal productivity method. So it's a system for organizing tasks, thoughts, ideas, dates, these types of things. So the basic concept is you use a dot grid journal with a series of shorthand markings like bullets, dashes, X's, checks, that kind of thing, that all mean something, some status of where that item lives in your productivity process, right? And you can make it up to be basically whatever you want, but they give you some kind of guidelines about what to do. And then as you either accomplish those things or recategorize them to things to do at a future date or whatever, you can mark it and then you move it to, kind of like roll it forward to the next page. So you're basically starting with a blank journal. You're taking an approach of organizing your thoughts, ideas, tasks, things like that. And then you're kind of developing the journal as you go. So it's a little different than like a day planner or something like that, where it's very set format and it's super structured. You are essentially kind of like taking an approach towards organizing your stuff, but with a lot of flexibility to adapt it to meet whatever needs that you have. And that's largely why there's so much content out there about bullet journaling, is because, the original creator, Ryder Carroll, who has bulletjournal.com. He's got a YouTube channel and stuff like that. So he's got some really good videos out there that explain the very basics of bullet journaling and why he created it. But he created this system really as a way to help him organize his thoughts and then, hone that system over years. and then shared it with everybody, and it really kind of went viral. It's been around for 6-7 years at this point, probably, Drew.
Yeah.
But it, after the first couple of years, it really started to take off, and now it's got a pretty good stronghold in the planner community. There's a lot of people who are into, scrapbooking and, urban sketching and, various other kind of side hobbies that associate with, journaling in general that have kind of bled over into the bullet journal space. You'll see a lot of people with really artsy kind of influence into their bullet journals. And then you'll see other people who use it much more as just it's a to-do list, and you organize it. So you can really adapt it and make it be kind of whatever you want it to be. But bulletjournal.com, that's the site that is the original. And we also have a book written by the creator, Ryder Carroll. It's called The Bullet Journal Method. So that explains not only the bullet journaling, how it works, but also kind of the methodology behind it and some introductory kind of practical ways that you can start to use it. I personally don't have a great productivity system of any kind, and I change them a lot. So I have made attempts at using the bullet journal with varying degrees of success, where it, for me, having it as a mildly more organized to-do list is more helpful. I basically have so many thoughts and ideas, I can't capture them all in one place. And so I use it more as sort of a filter. I will get stuff out of my head, put it onto the paper, and then kind of process it through my own very simplified bullet journal type process. And then mostly it kind of just lives there, and I don't really go back and revisit it too much because I just have more ideas that keep coming into my head. So anyway, but it's a good way to help capture it. It's a good way to, be able to use your pens on a practical, more daily basis, because you can just keep a journal, a notebook with you. Ryder originally collaborated with Leuchtturm and actually came up with a official bullet journal notebook. So it's a Leuchtturm journal. It has 3 bookmarks. It has the key in the open back cover, or the back of the, what do you call this thing? It's not the first page, but the back of the front cover, right? There's a word for this page, right? It's not an insert because there's not a wrapping.
Are you talking about the index?
Yeah, but what's this called? It's it's the cover. It's not an actual page. It's glued to the back of the cover. I don't know book terms, but anyway, It's there. It's part of the book. You can't tear it out. So it's there for easy reference for all the different keys and markings and stuff like that. So, just example, it's got a bullet is a task. When you complete it, you can do an X. If you're moving it to a different page or a different part of the journal, you can migrate it. All of the pages are numbered. So if you want to create an index, so there's some basic framework that's in the bullet journal actual product. Got some little tips there. So there's an index that you can write the page numbers. So if you want to have a high level look at what's happening this month, you can take one page and you make it for February, I'm thinking towards next month. And then I can just write down some of the things that I know are coming up in February. Well, then after that page, I can flip to February 1st. I can make a February 1st page, and then I can know and reference back to the overall February page. But then, so there's all kinds of different ways that you can go about it. But that's the basic idea, is you're taking more or less an open notebook, and you are applying a very basic set of organization criteria, and then just applying it to your thoughts. That's pretty much the basics. That's about as much as I know.
Great. And I'll link both the Ryder Carroll book as well as the Leuchtturm bullet journal in the description. So if you want to pick one of those up, you can.
There you go. All right. Next question. This is from Cameron Clark. What other papers are we all using? With Tomoe in limbo, I need new paper.
Well, Cameron, I can't speak for what everybody is using, but I've got a few go-tos that I can talk about. My most often used go-to is a Rhodia number 16 A5 top wire-bound dot grid pad. Yes, Brian, I have switched from staple bound to top wire bound because sometimes I just want to flip and keep whatever I have going on here.
Mm-hmm. Do you use the back? Do you use the back of your pages?
I do for doodling.
Okay.
Once I've written on them, I like the just to be able to have something to doodle on and I don't want to waste paper. So I use the back of old notes to doodle on.
So I'm kind of with you. Like I like the go-to is the number 16 dot pad. Mm-hmm. I love these, obviously. But yeah, kind of the disadvantage. It's great if you're just writing something quick and then you're kind of tearing the sheet off. But yeah, if you're trying to like actually keep a notebook, like these things are not the great. Like these are meant to be disposable, and you tear out a sheet and go. More like
and this is more disposable too. But I think that the top wire bound allows me to revisit things and just kind of make use of more pages and not be as wasteful. With the Rhodia, with the staple bound, if you tear off a sheet, you got to actually just keep the sheet if you want to use the back of it for nonsense, and then you just have a bunch of random sheets laying around. Now, with the wire bound, they're always there.
Question for you. So those sheets are micro perforated in your top wire bound there. Mm-hmm. Do you tear the micro perforation or do you just rip it out like an animal?
If I'm ripping it out like an animal, it's going in the trash. Then I'm done. You're not keeping it. But if I'm saving it for some reason, then I absolutely use the perforations. I cannot.
So you leave like the little extra like flap of paper with the rings like cut out of it. You leave that in the notebook.
No. So
or do you tear this is where I'm getting at here.
I tear the whole thing out. It's still got the gnarliness on there, and then I fold it over at the micro perforations and pull it off. Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'm just curious. Like if anybody's got like a 3/4 used up top wire bound with all of the like micro perforated like extra flap pieces still in there.
That bothers me. And that's another thing why I like the top wire bound, not the top staple bound, Brian, is because when I'm dealing with the top staple bound, I probably have one around here somewhere. There have been very few times where I've emptied a whole Rhodia number 16 staple bound pad and have a clean exit every time I've pulled one off, but most of the time it doesn't happen, and I get this like wad of chunk on it, and
just like I've got going on right at the top.
That upsets me so much, because then you can't get rid of it unless you peel off layer by layer. And
what I find, this isn't our tip section yet, but this will be a little bonus tip in here. So sometimes that's hard to avoid, but I find that if I actually press down on the binding when I tear it off, especially in the middle or like kind of towards the beginning where I'm starting to do the tear, if I actually press it down and compress it, that actually helps keep it from tearing in the first place. It's not foolproof, but it's better. It helps it tear less.
But I have moved on to the top wire bound, so that's my thing. My second favorite is the Mnemosyne. This is a B6 book, so this is a little bit smaller than the
an interesting
A5
size.
I know, but you don't need a large side.
It looks like it's like a steno pad. It looks like a reporter pad, right?
Well, they have a reporter pad too, Brian. So they've got that's my other favorite. So they've got this one, which is more closely related to this. This is like a desk pad, and then they've got the B7 and then A7, I think. A7. So the A7 is like tiny. It's like smaller than my phone. But then the A6, no. The B7, sorry. The B7 is like a reporter pad. It's like the size of your phone. You can easily put it on the back of your pocket. I love that for just taking notes. When we were all back in the office and actually having normal people meetings, I would keep one of those with me, well, before I got my little digital boogie board here thing, and just take notes just to keep it in my brain, just to have that memory game so that I could remember, what I'm trying to connect, and also to write down questions so I can wait for that opportunity. So I love those, and it's really good quality paper. It's a little bit more, it's definitely more structured than something like a Rhodia pad, because every page has a date and a number and then a title up at the top. You probably cannot see that, but up at the top line it has that, and then it's just lined underneath. But it does give you a little bit of organization, but it's not intrusive organization, so it's not going to bother you if you choose to not use it.
It's suggestive, but not forceful.
Right. Yeah. But it's not going to get in your way, which I like about that, because you can write the meeting that you're having up at the top, or just whatever ideas you're trying to come up with up at the top, and it's there for you. Yeah. But I will also like to mention that it's good to have, like, this is nice paper, but it's not very absorbent. So if you have a slow drying ink that might look really pretty, flipping and closing, you're going to get smudges. So it's never a bad idea to have a book like Leuchtturm, which is a little bit more prone to feathering and bleed through with certain inks, but also dries quickly. So if you shut that thing, you're going to be at less of a risk for smearing and stuff like that, which I like. So I like kind of having them both. Field Notes is also a great brand for that because, yes, there will be many fountain pens that just don't look good on that brand. However, it's a pocket notepad. So if you're writing with a well-behaved ink, it's going to be just fine. And you're not writing it to, catalog and pass on to your children anyway. It's just for, a quick reference notebook. So I love those as well. And, all of these have different applications. You've got your nice paper that might dry a little bit slowly, but show off ink really well for your desk situation. And then more of an everyday book, which would be something like your Leuchtturm. And then you're on the go. I don't really care what this looks like. I'm just writing it down to remember it. Field Notes. And those can also go in the Rickshaw koozie case. Fits really nicely in there.
Little,
so I
always have nice little plug.
I have a Field Notes with me wherever I go. And I don't care about the paper quality because it does its job. Mm-hmm. And as far as Tomoe River goes, because Cameron did ask about the future of Tomoe River, explore some new paper options for sure, but also, hang tight. I don't think Tomoe is gone forever. There have been a lot of things to suggest that a worthy successor will be on its way at some point in 2022. We don't know what that looks like yet, but, if you dig around on the internet, you can find some reviews and some images that suggest that there is light at the end of the tunnel. So don't fret too much there.
Yeah, we've heard rumblings. We don't know enough to really be able to say definitively how that's going to work out. But I mean, legitimately, it was like, yeah, it's going away. Like there was no alternative option. But I think recently we've heard rumblings like, no, somebody else is either picking it up or buying it or whatever.
They bought it. They're working on actually, getting production up and running.
Yeah,
and when that happens,
it's going to be a different name, right? Like it's going to change the.
We don't know that right now. They're just calling it Tomoe River Successor. I don't know how long that's going to last, but so title, we're just going to stick with our distributor that brings us our Goulet notebooks. Mm-hmm. And when they say, "Hey, we've got a new type of paper, we're switching it over," we will tell you because that's currently our stake in the matter.
Yeah, we know that paper is used in a number of different products, and I think we've talked about that in a past Pencast. Our Goulet notebooks, we're going to have them for a while because we kind of stocked up. So we're still going to have the previous whatever version of Tomoe River. So whatever successor comes, that successor will probably come out before our notebooks actually change over. I'm guessing, but it's there's still too much up in the air. We're not super plugged in to the the core of that transition. We're like kind of barely able to get more information than most other people, but we're kind of scouring the internet and just keeping a close eye on it like you all are. All right, good stuff. Thanks, Drew.
Yeah.
All right.
Our next question comes to us from Mihir, and they ask, why does some pens ink need to be forced into the feed? Meaning it stops writing and you need to prime the feed using the converter or the cartridge or whatever.
Yeah, because this was one of my tips of the week, right? Is you can like kind of force ink down, through the piston and wetten up your feed. That's not a word. Wet it up. Wet your feed is probably the actual English way to say it. So I would say if all is well, you shouldn't need to do this at all.
Right.
It's basically like a compensation mechanism. You're basically working around inadequate flow, which could be caused by a couple of things. It could be caused by some legitimate defective things. It could be caused by some preferential things. So the number one is some kind of improperly tuned nib. The tines often are too tight and it's just not flowing the ink through. That leads to the tip from last week with Drew, where you can, bounce those tines just a little bit, spread them just a tad, and get that ink flowing through. That will often fix that issue. But if you do that, then you really shouldn't have to be forcing ink down unless you have maybe some of the other issues, which I'm going to talk about right now. One of which I end up dealing with on a pretty regular basis, which is a clogged nib or feed, usually because of a lack of proper pen maintenance Or maybe you have some old ink or some old paper fibers or something like that that's kind of clogged up and it's just slowing things down, either in your nib, maybe in your tines, in your feed somewhere, your feed channel. And it's just kind of like the works are clogged up a little bit and the ink is just not able to flow through like it should. In my situation, it's not usually because I'm using one pen so many times and like paper fibers are getting jammed up in there, because it happens. Like you got a metal nib that you're writing over top of paper, which if you look microscopically at paper, it's not smooth at all. It looks really, really like rough and gravelly. So there's friction happening. So you're creating static electricity through friction, and that metal nib is attracting paper fibers and dust and everything to it. And then when you're writing, and it happens over a while, but this is part of the reason why it's good, even if you're using the same ink, to just clean out your pen every few weeks, with a quick flush of water, because you'll get paper fibers and dust and other things like that will literally be attracted to your nib through static electricity. And those things can kind of work their way into the feed and build up over time because, it just happens. Over time, as that happens, if you haven't been cleaning your pen and it's not flowing properly, you think like you're flushing, ink through the feed and all that kind of stuff, and you're like, man, this thing just doesn't write like it used to. Well, the nib, and it may be tuned well and be perfectly fine, you just need to clean it out. So that's usually the easiest thing to do. Is like whenever there's a flow problem, it's like clean your pen. Just try cleaning your pen. That's the number one thing to always do. And then look at some other things after that. There are some inks, this again is kind of a pen maintenance issue, I guess, but it could deal with if you're trying with ink mixing, or if you clean your pen a little bit, but not super thoroughly. There are different types of fountain pen ink that maybe don't play super well together. They don't have full MSDS sheets with all the specific chemical components of every ink.
Or even parts of MSDS sheets.
Or even really
paragraph.
any information other than water and dye that we know is in these fountain pen inks. So, it's pretty rare, but every now and then you can get some inks that maybe don't play so nicely together. They can, kind of create some sort of mutant sort of liquid inside your pen and kind of gum up the works a little bit. Usually it's not to the point where it's like actually causing harm, but it's like if you have an old pen and you don't know what ink it had in there and you just ink it back up with something else, you could be taking that risk. So again, cleaning your pen will pretty much take care of that. Another reason that this might happen is nib size. The nib size might not be as broad as what you like have in your mind that you want, or maybe it's just like the ink writes a little more stingy. Like it might be flowing perfectly fine for what it's supposed to do, but you might just like want it to be doing something different. You might want it to be writing wetter. I was in this exact situation literally with the first fountain pen I ever inked up. You all know that I am a fan of blue. I love deep saturated blue colors. And the first ink that I ever inked up was Diamine China Blue, which is like a periwinkle type color. And I wanted it in my like visceral reaction. I wanted it to be darker than it just actually was. So I was like pressing down. I was trying to make the like the ink darker than it was actually capable of being. So sometimes that can happen when you just want it to be something different than it is. Well, you can flood the feed and you can get more ink down, and sure, you can kind of do that, but it's, there's a point where it's just not going to do anything different than what it's supposed to. So when you're forcing that ink down, it does flood the feed. It makes the pen write wetter, but only for a little bit. And so it's kind of a temporary measure. You can get it flowing. If it's usually a situation where the ink is dried up and you need to resaturate it, sometimes just flooding the feed will be enough to kind of reconstitute the dried up ink that was already in there, and it'll get flowing again and it'll kind of get it working. Sometimes that doesn't work if it's been really dried out, or depending on how saturated the ink was, if there's a lot of dye that's kind of left behind, you might have to flood it a few times to kind of get it flowing again. The more you use a pen regularly, the better it's going to flow and the better it's going to work. If you're only using a pen once every 2 weeks, and it starts to kind of evaporate out, you're not really flushing anything through there enough to get that consistent flow. That's where you need to just go ahead and actually do a cleaning. But if you're just, flooding the ink down from the ink chamber, that's where it can help. It's really a bandage. It's not a cure. So I would say, give the pen a thorough cleaning, try it again, see if it helps anything. If you need to, with a deeper thing. Not everybody has those brass sheets, but that's one of the things that we carry for that reason. Is sometimes you get like paper fibers and stuff that get clogged up in your nib. You can floss the tines. You can do all these things. But then, ultimately, once you've done all these things, it might just be that the ink in that particular pen just isn't as dark as you want it to be, or doesn't flow as wet as you want it to be. And that's where like changing the ink and trying out different things might help. So, in short, that there's a lot of different variables happening here, but you don't need to force the pen down the feed. It's just a hack and a way to kind of work around some of these other various things. And the more you use your pens and kind of test all these different things out, the more you learn kind of what its limitations are, as well as what you can expect from, pens that are in kind of different statuses of use and things like that. Coming from someone who has to do this a lot because he never cleans his pens.
And if your pen doesn't cap or seal super well, it might dry out more, which would then lead to you probably priming it more often. And one other thing I'll say is on Brian's fact about just making sure that the ink is what you expect it to be. One thing that I have spoken to some people about is the kind of trick that your pen can play on you. If you just ink it up, or it's been sitting for a while, you're going to get a more saturated flow. And then once you've exhausted everything that feed has been really saturated with, then you're going to get the normal flow, which is the flow that the feed is pulling down from the ink reservoir. And that's normal. But if you're not ready for that, it's going to look like, oh no, something happened. It's not as beautiful and saturated as it was, but that's totally normal. When a pen sits for a while, that feed gets really saturated. And of course, if you fill it with the feed, if you dunk that feed into ink, it's going to be saturated for a while as well. You just have to work that feed out so you then establish the normal flow. But that's totally normal. Don't let it fool you.
Yeah. One little note about that. So in the early pen days, when I was talking to some kind of like old school pen reps and stuff like that have been selling pens for years, they were always taught from like Parker and Pelican and some of the old school brands that when you're filling your pen initially, especially with like a piston filling pen, like something that holds a lot of ink, you fill it all the way. And just exactly what Drew was talking about, your feed is going to be like fully saturated with ink. And then obviously it's going to write super, super wet, which you may or may not want. But then also it's more likely to kind of blob and do all these sorts of things when it's just holding just a ton of ink there. So what they actually kind of promoted, and I don't know if this is in a lot of the pen like literature that comes with certain pens or just how widely this is talked about, but they always said like you fill the pen all the way and then you turn down the piston so that you get like 2 drops usually that actually drop back into the bottle from the pen, and then you twist it back up. So what that's doing, you're trying to get a full fill, you're doing those 2 drops, which the feed is already completely saturated. So you're letting out those 2 drops. And then when you have that 2 drops worth that you are then screwing the piston back into the, fill position, it's sucking the remainder of that extra ink out of the feed. And that's about, it depends on the feed, obviously, and how much ink it's holding, but that's probably about where, will be more of its natural state. So,
Yeah, no, people still do that. I've talked to a couple people who still use that strategy.
Yeah. It's not really something that's like specifically like you must do it this way, but it's more of like, this is kind of a general practice of kind of how it's supposed to be.
Or you could blot.
You could blot. Yeah, that's more what I end up doing.
Yeah, me too.
I do the blotting thing. Yeah. There you go. Boom. Lots of information about a very specific thing, but that's kind of what this whole Pencast is. All right, next question. This is from Yash. How about custom nib grinds and also DIY nib grinds? Drew,
so a lot of the times
you've done some of these things.
Yeah, I have. A lot of the times on Instagram, I'll just be like, "Hey, what should we talk about?" I don't actually say, "Ask us a question." So this is, I like it because I'm just going to kind of take this in my own direction. So Yash, I'm going to just kind of take this from an entry level perspective because a lot of people may not know what a custom grind even is. So a custom grind is essentially someone reshaping the tipping material of a fountain pen nib. Most fountain pen nibs have a iridium alloy or some super hard alloy at the tip of the pen that gives it its shape, be it an extra fine, medium, or broad. That's all dependent on the size of that tipping material. And when you reshape that tipping material, you can create a different type of line. If you make it really, really flat, then you get a ribbony italic line. If you kind of bring in the sides, and you get somewhat of an architect, which is the opposite. It writes really wide side to side, really thin up and down. You can do all sorts of stuff, and there have been all sorts of stuff done to these nibs to provide you with different writing patterns. There are a bunch of different types. The most common one that you'll probably see is a stub nib or italic nib. They kind of get used interchangeably sometimes. Technically, a stub is a little bit more rounded than an italic, but that doesn't really matter for this conversation. The conversation you and I are having, I guess. But that's the most common one for sure, and that provides a wide downstroke and a thin cross-stroke. An architect is the opposite. Very, very thin downstroke, very, very wide, left to right stroke. The best ways to acquire those are probably through someone at a pen show who's like grinding nibs right there. It's not something that is super accessible. It's not something that you can just kind of go get at the drop of a hat. We have collaborated with a couple different nibmeisters, is what they're called, or nib grinding professionals, whatever you want to. Anyway, we have worked with Mark Bacchus over at nibgrinder.com and Gina Salarino over at Custom Nibs Studio. And we, every now and then, will have them create a batch of pens for us with their custom grind, and we will sell it at our retail store. So you can always keep an eye out on the website. Mark has done Viscontis for us, and Gina has done some Pelicans for us, as well as some Diplomats for us. So keep your eye out on that. If we have any available, I will link it below, so check that out. I'll have to do a little bit of checking on that. That's the overall what a custom nib is. As far as DIY grinds, you're getting into some serious business there, and you are going to screw up your nibs if you give that a shot, especially with a pen you already have. So Just be wary. If you do want to practice, the cheapest nibs you can find that we have are the Noodler's non-flex nib. Those are $3.50 right now anyway. So I would say buy a bunch of those. Get one of these nail files. You can get these pretty much anywhere. They've got 3 different, as you can see, I've worn the heck out of mine. They've usually got 3 sides, coarse, less coarse, not so coarse, and you can use that to reshape a nib. My suggestion would be to buy a stub nib, unless you already have one, and literally just try to make one nib the shape of the other one. You'll need a loop, obviously, that allows you to actually see what the shape is, and just try to clone that a little bit. Look at how the stub nib is different than the normal nib. Obviously, the normal nib is going to be a ball. The stub nib is going to be just kind of a flat piece, and just try to match it, make one look like the other. It's a, tried and true example, just like, learning how to draw, you copy something off of another, page, or, download a picture or something like that. So that's where I'd start, just trying to copy that. The stub nib is probably the easiest one to do, unless you're just trying to make a big ball into a smaller ball. If you wanted to practice that, you certainly could do that as well. But there are actually a good amount of videos out there with people talking about their experiences. We haven't made one because it is fraught, and it'll probably be a while before we ever make one. Honestly, we've talked about it, but to do it right requires time and expertise that this is one of the things we don't compromise on, is talking about nib grinding. We can give our opinions left and right about stuff we don't know particularly a lot about on the Pencast, but when it comes to nib grinding, we're not. There are some things we will not give you half-witted information on. And then just go slow and be prepared to ruin a bunch of nibs, especially if you start with those $3.50 nibs. They're medium fine nibs. They're not even a real nib size, kind of. So, and there's probably not going to be a lot of consistency.
It's a real nib size. Come on now.
I mean, I would be willing to bet you're not going to find impeccable consistency in the sizing of those, which is fine for practicing.
Okay.
And we're just practicing. After you can do a couple of those, then the Goulet nibs that we sell are $14, $15, depending on whether or not you go with a number 5 or number 6. So that'd probably be the next accessible option for you. And then you can just kind of go from there and practice on the more expensive nibs, but are probably going to be a little bit more consistent.
Yeah.
So that's the short version.
Yeah. I mean, nib grinding in general, like Drew and I have both done it. We've had some training around it. It's very cool. It's very, like, when you can actually do it successfully, you're like, I feel like a superhuman. Like it's like metal and
it's like when Tom Hanks in Castaway, I have made fire. It's just I have achieved greatness.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool feeling.
Architect.
But largely that feeling comes once you've already ruined like 10 nibs and you are just like, you feel absolutely awful. And you're like, here's this $3.50 nib that cost me $50 to create with all of the nibs I've ruined to get to this point. So it's like, that is par for the course. That's going to happen. There's cheaper nibs that you can get like in bulk on eBay and stuff like that. I know like nib meisters, nib grinders are a pretty resourceful bunch, and they basically all have to kind of like hack their way into it. Like I don't know anyone who's gotten into nib work that hasn't had to pretty much bootstrap their way into it, because there is no nib school, there's no like training program, there's nothing official out there. It's pretty much a trade craft that like you have to kind of either just like figure it out yourself or somehow get in with somebody who knows how to do it and train, or whatever. But I know, I hope I'm not causing Mark strife by doing this, but Mark Bacchus has been generous with his time in the past with us, and I know that he tries to share his knowledge with others who are also like seriously interested in doing nib work. He was the beneficiary of a lot of, help from Mike Masuyama, and Mike at Work, I think is his website. But they're both very reputable, very experienced and very busy people. So
very busy.
They may at least be able to point you in the right direction or give you some tips kind of along the way. But if you're pretty seriously interested in it, there's a lot to learn and it's pretty rewarding. But it's the kind of thing that's like, it's pretty hard to do it casually, especially on your own like nice pens where you can't just get replaceable nibs and stuff, because you're definitely going to screw up some nibs. So it's a tough thing to kind of just dip your toes in. But it is, I don't know, it's pretty interesting. It's pretty fun.
It is. The trick is, obviously it's difficult to get that perfect shape, but the real challenging thing and the thing that I cannot do is reproduce the same custom nib consistently.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've made an Architect, I've made an Ultra Extra Fine, once, and saying, okay, cool, I got it, let me do it again. And I can't do it. It's like, it'll take 5 tries to get that good one, and I'm like, yeah, I got it, and then it'll be like another 5 tries, and I'm like, why can't I? And it takes a lot of discipline to do that consistently, and some people have and some people don't, and I don't.
Yeah, and it's tough because you really have to pay your dues. I mean, especially because you're working on something so small. Like you're using a jeweler's loop that's like 10 to 20x magnification. And even still, when you get past like the general alignment and stuff of the nib, you basically can't see what you're doing at that point. You're pretty much having to go by feel and flow. So it's like you really have to understand what you're doing and how it's impacting things that are so small you can't even see it. It's kind of amazing and frustrating at the same time, but you basically need to put in like thousands of hours of practice.
Yeah, this is another one of those things.
To be able to do it, it's like golf, right? Like anybody can get lucky and smack a really clean drive, but if you're trying to play in the PGA Tour, this is literally all I know about golf. If you're trying to play in the PGA Tour, like it's a very elite group who can actually play consistently enough. And even then you see people just totally like whiffing it, not whiffing it. Okay. But there are people totally just like having terrible rounds, even at the most professional level, because it's that hard to do consistently. I think nib grinding is every bit as complex as golf.
This is another one of those things that Brian and I know enough about to be super impressed with the folks that can do it well.
Yeah. Like I did enough nib grinding, and honestly, I really want to practice more. It's tough too, because like there's all kinds of gear and stuff that you need to get as well, and honestly, even just knowing what equipment to use is half the battle. But the I did enough of it to know like, oh cool, all I know now is exactly how much I'm never going to be able to invest the time to do this like I would want to. And it's kind of like, oh, yeah. Like I played a lot of musical instruments. I have play. I probably could play some these days. It's been a little while, but like Rachel knows how to play piano. I took some piano lessons and I'm not super natural at it. And I kind of stopped playing because I was like, I could learn it, but the amount of time I would have to invest in practicing would be so immense. I would have to give up so many other things. Like, I just don't know that I have, at this stage of my life, I don't know that I have it in me. So I stopped, and it's like kind of depressing. You're like, I can't, whatever. I can't really invest the time, but you know what? We all have to make choices, right? Whenever you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. So it's kind of how I feel about nib grinding.
But if you're interested in it, give it a try with some cheap nibs. And
now that we've really sold you on it.
Well, no. Like, you and I are different, Brian, but there's somebody out there that once they do it, they're going to do it better than we did, and they're going to like be way, way more passionate than we were about it, and then they will go. So if you feel that passion, that urge, then go for it. Absolutely. Yes. If you try and you feel that fire, like, just keep stoking the flames, buddy. Like, keep at it, because this hobby benefits from folks like that for sure.
Yes, and it helps if you're a severe introvert, because you're going to be spending a lot of time by yourself, hunched over, wearing a loop, grinding tiny little things all day long. So if you like that kind of stuff, then you might enjoy it. All right. Drew, we have another question here.
Yes, we do. Our final question this week comes to us from Firewalker114.
Sweet name.
And they are asking you, Brian, is there an italic or stub nib that's small enough to be practical for everyday use?
Small enough to be practical. This is a little bit subjective. I'm interpreting this as like the actual line that you're putting down, not the physical size of the nib.
Yeah.
But I would say that any nib's physical size is practical.
Yeah, I'm thinking that they're meaning like between your average type of grid or lined paper. Some stub nibs produce a very, very wide line that's just what's the right word? That word for clunky or dang. All right, I'm just gonna shout it in a couple minutes. You go on ahead.
Okay. So basically when you have your standard nib sizes, like the ball nibs that are all just like pretty much one size, no matter which direction you're writing in, extra fine, medium, broad, etc. That's cumbersome. Okay. There you go.
I knew it would come.
There you go. We're going to have somebody in the YouTube comments be like, cumbersome! All caps.
Okay.
And that's it. So the...
Sorry.
No.
Just ruined it.
Totally lost my train of thought. So like, what size actually is an extra fine, medium, broad, etc.? There's some general rules, but it's kind of like, women's dress sizes. It's very approximate in a general direction, but also open to much interpretation depending on who's making it and whatever. So when you get into, the stub nibs, there's usually something a bit more definitive, 1.0, 1.1, 1.5, but even then it's like, is that the actual line width on the page? Is that the line width at the corners? Is that the width at the, past the tipping or whatever? Like, where is that number actually occurring? And
Spoiler alert, they don't ever tell us and we don't know.
Yeah, we don't really know. I don't think they even know. But anyway, so it's also somewhat approximate, but whatever. We've at least got a little more room to work with there. Like being able to tell a 1.1 stub or italic, pretty easy to tell from a 1.5 or a 1.9. I'm going with like Lami's nibs that they have there because a lot of people are familiar with those. So I think as a very general rule, we find that once you get into the 1.3, 1.5 sizes, that starts to get to
cumbersome.
Be a tad cumbersome for your everyday rulings, right? Like definitely too big for a 5mm dot grid or a graph ruling. It kind of pushes the limits on your 7mm ruling, which is like the American college rule, European 7mm. If you get to an 8mm or above, like a Clairefontaine has more of an 8mm, that's more of what you would call your, your not college ruling, but the standard ruling in America. That's like what the elementary school kids and stuff use. That's going to be the larger that you can kind of work with, but 7mm really helps to have that 1.1 or lower. The weird thing is that basically you have 1.1, or like Pilot has some 1.0s, which are largely pretty close to the 1.1. But there's really nothing finer than that comes readily available from basically any pen manufacturer, maybe with some rare exception. But I think correct me if I'm wrong, Drew, but I think a 1.0 or a 1.1 is about the finest stub that you're going to find without going with a custom grind.
I don't know if Nemesign's still around, but they had some 0.8s and stuff like that.
They did.
So I don't know if you can still buy those somewhere else. And then there is there's a nib in the Noodler's Art Pack nib assortment that has some untipped nibs in it that put down a really, really small italic line, but they're also untipped and a little funky to write with. So yeah, I would say that traditionally what we can say on our website, a Lamy 1.1 or a Pilot 1.0 usually would do the business. I think that you'll find a 1.0 in Pilot's Plumix, and then some Metros, and then do some. I think the Prera has a 1.0 as well.
Yeah.
I don't know about
it's the same. It's the same Pilot.
Same nib. Yeah, same
just
nib
available
on
these
pens.
different pens.
But yeah, so check around there. I'll put some links in.
Yeah, very cool. So yeah, I mean, I think if you have really small handwriting, then the ruling doesn't even really matter so much. You're gonna find that a bit cumbersome. But we've done some custom grinds, like some custom cursive italic grinds on like fine and medium nibs with Mark Bacchus, and I think with Gina as well. They've been finer than that. They are not super popular. It's I would say it's one of the more popular custom grinds that people do, but in the grand scheme of things, still not incredibly popular, because when you start to get, and I think this is the reason why modern manufacturers are not making stub nibs that are ground finer than like a 1.0. When you get to like a broad nib, generally speaking, you're about a 0.8mm or somewhere thereabouts, maybe 0.9. Medium nibs are like 0.7, 0.65, something like that, and they get smaller and smaller from there. So if you go to like take a typical broad nib and grind that to be a stub nib, you're looking at something that is less and less dramatic from the cross stroke to the downstroke. So you're not getting something that looks quite as impressive. It's a little more nuanced, and they're going to be a little less forgiving, because when you have these stub nibs, if you over-rotate your hand one direction or the other, you're not going to get good contact with both of the tines because of the shape of the tip of the stub nib. And so it's gonna be less forgiving. And when you have those finer nibs, it requires you to really keep those pens in specific contact with the paper. Otherwise, it's going to feel scratchy. It's going to write dry, these types of things. And I think, probably at some point in the past, these types of nibs were more readily available. There were probably so many complaints and warranty claims and stuff just because people, just were not really used to them or didn't appreciate the finer, the very, very slight variance you would get in the cross and the downstroke, and so manufacturers are probably like, screw it, this is not worth the trouble. We'll just make them a little wider, and then it feels a little better and it's more dramatic and it's fine. So it's pretty much relegated these days to the realm of custom grinds. But you can get some pretty interesting, pretty cool line variation with some finer stubs. And then just a side note, stub and italic and all that, technically they mean different things, but most manufacturers use those terms interchangeably. No one mass produces anything that's not a stub, basically. Stub is more rounded on the corner, so it doesn't scratch quite as much. So you get a little less definition on your cross stroke. If you go with what's known as a cursive italic or a crisp italic, crisp is like very sharp. You can actually cut paper with it, but you get very crisp lines, but basically nobody enjoys writing with a crisp italic, so you absolutely have to get that custom ground.
Which is why we couldn't sell the Aurora Ypsilons.
Yeah, exactly. So if you go too crisp, people don't really understand. They don't really do it. But everybody just calls it stub, italic, whatever, but it's basically all stubs. So there we go. All right, Drew, think we
No, I think you said it really well. Totally agree. Well done.
All right, we got a new tip of the week for you all. This will be a quick one. This is a paper-related tip, paper and ink-related tip, I guess.
How about that?
Yeah. So, basically, we talked about bullet journaling and, productivity planning and these types of things. Drew mentioned some different papers that have different dry times and things like that. So one of the things that can be kind of tough when you're writing on the go, specifically if you're writing with like your traditional, kind of bound journal that you are going to be writing on it, closing it up, taking it with you, writing quick notes. If you're like me, you love broader nibs with really wet inks, but they require a little more time to dry on the page.
Or if you want to use something like Clairefontaine, which shows up color beautifully, but dries a little slower.
Or you're like me, you like using, I have the Goulet notebooks with the Tomoe River paper, which has like the longest dry time in the world, and you love using shimmering inks and really saturated things like that. Well, I will like write a note and then I'm like walking around like this with my notebook for 2 minutes while I'm waiting for it to dry as I'm like, and I look like I'm like, okay, what's wrong with that guy? And I'm like, I just don't want my ink to smudge. So a little hack for that, it's kind of like a two-pronged hack, a double, you're knocking out two things with one
like a sausage
solution.
Fork.
Spork. Yeah, like a spork.
No, like one of the long barbecue.
Oh, okay.
Prongs. Yeah.
You can like grab two things with one. Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know where we're going with that. So anyway, you take a sheet of blotter paper and you can use it not only as a bookmark, which you can just kind of stick it in there, but also when you have a blotter paper, which is basically just a really absorbent piece of paper. So you can use whatever really absorbent piece of paper you want. It doesn't technically officially have to be blotter paper. The blotter paper that we have is the Urban blotter paper that, yeah, sure, it's blotter paper, but like there's nothing more special about that blotter paper than you can get basically anywhere else. Blotter paper, I think, is probably one of the more specialized papers that are pretty readily available most places because it's basically its job is to be really absorbent. So it's easier to make probably than most other types of paper.
Do you think that for the parents out there that construction paper would be just as effective?
Probably. If you have
it's bigger and
maybe it would be interesting to test like which.
Because I know I've got plenty of that in my house.
Well, you know what, Drew? You should try some and report back. I'm like assigning that to you, even though I totally have construction paper here too. But I think Drew is going to be inspired to do this.
Thanks, buddy.
Yes, but anyway, if you have actual blotter paper, it's nice because it's not so absorbent that you could actually have it absorb and then it smear on somewhere else, or like it spread the ink, into other parts. I don't know. That would be an interesting test to see like what papers can you actually use as blotter paper. But whatever, actual blotter paper is used for blotting, so that's why I say that. So anyway, use whatever absorbent paper that you find fitting. You can not only use it as a bookmark, but then basically if you keep it, and especially if like this is actually not blotter paper, this is a card, this is stationery, so I'm faking it here. Okay, you caught me. Don't ask me. This is literally it's like a Crown Mill special order card thing that we bought years ago. But anyway, so if you have something more absorbent, it helps if you have something that fits more to the size of the whole notebook, because then you can literally just like stick the whole thing in there. And basically wherever you write on the page, you can write whatever you want. It can be wet on the page, and then you close it. It absorbs the excess ink into the blotter paper, and then you don't have to worry about it like smearing and imprinting onto the other page, unless you like dump it on there so thick that it goes through the blotter paper. I guess theoretically that's possible, but I've not really had that happen. And even still, it's going to be way cleaner than if you had dumped it on there and then not used blotter paper and closed your notebook. So it's a nice little hack that is super simple. It acts as a bookmark, makes it easy to find where you last wrote in it, and it makes it so that you can just run and gun, just write notes on the go, and then you really don't have to think about it, and you can reuse that same sheet of blotter paper like over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And yeah, it's a great little tip. So blotter paper as a bookmark in your notebook on the go. Tip of the week.
All right. There you have it.
All right. This week, we have a pen spotlight, which I guess is what we're calling this now. We changed this from our pen of the week. Now it's the inconsistently done pen spotlight as we feel inspired.
Yes.
And Drew felt inspired to do one and was like, hey, Brian, if you're so inspired, why don't you throw one in here? And I was like, you know what? I think I will. So we got 2 different pens for you that we're going to talk about.
Yes, indeed. I was talking about flex pens recently in a Pencast, and now a couple people pointed out that some of the flex pens weren't actually flex pens, but that's very subjective, and a lot of what we sell, the vendor says that they're flex, but we don't think they are, so whatever. I made a list. Sorry. Anyway, in that list, I put the Pilot Falcon as my number 1, and turned off the Pencast, shut off the camera, and I just sat and pondered, man, the Pilot Falcon is cool. And I just started thinking about that. I want to talk more about the Falcon, Brian. So, okay. I like flat top pens. I have no time
you do.
for rounded cigar-shaped pens. That is,
just
in
like
my opinion,
that Sailor Pen of the Year that you've fallen in love with. That's
okay.
Oh, wait, that's not a flat top. Wait a minute.
All right.
I'm just kidding.
Anyway,
you are definitely a flat top dude.
I'm definitely, yes. And if the pen of the year came out as a Pro Gear,
you'd be all over that.
Yeah, come on now.
All over that.
Pilot Falcon, flat top pen, classic design, timeless look, and the feed profile with the nib is one of the most, you could look at that nib profile and know instantly. If you just saw the shadow of that nib and that feed, you'd know it's a Pilot Falcon. There's nothing else like it. It's just
it's like Michael Jordan's head.
What?
Yeah.
You think you could notice Michael Jordan's head if you saw a shadow of it?
It's actually something that I learned in college. Granted, this was a little while ago in marketing classes, is that the outline, the silhouette of Michael Jordan's head was one of the most recognizable, head shape things, at least at its time in the 90s and stuff like that. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, just look it up. Just Google it or something. Michael Jordan's head. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about when you see it, but he just had a very, it was probably just marketing, but it was actually the shape of his head. But yeah, anyway, just the silhouette of his ears and his bald head and all that kind of stuff. I mean, so many people recognize that as that's Michael Jordan's head. Anyway, this has nothing to do with anything. But all that to say, the Falcon has a very distinctive shape to its nib, as Drew's pointing out.
Yes, don't make me think of Michael Jordan's head when I'm looking at this gorgeous pen. Not that Michael Jordan's head isn't gorgeous. I don't. The Falcon is its own entity, and it is gorgeous without the Michael Jordan head association. Anyway, I love the little inlaid, gold silver thing that they put in the top of the cap. That's something that I don't think a lot of people know about. It's a nice little detail there.
It's a nice little touch. Yeah. I don't know the name for that. I've called that little piece a cabochon before, which I think is it's a jewelry term, but I don't know if that specifically refers to jewels inset.
I think we got corrected last time you said that, but maybe it's right this time. I don't know. An inlay. It's like an inlay in the top of a metal inlay. But the thing I love the most about the Pilot Falcon is that it is, in my opinion, the softest, most pleasant writing experience you can get in a modern fountain pen that also provides reliable flow. And that's if you're just writing with it normal, you're not trying to overstress it or anything. But the Falcon writes like a pilot should. Like pilots are known to write with their consistency. And the Falcon does that. If you are expecting it to do a bunch of crazy stuff, then hey, that's on you. But as far as actual just a satisfyingly comfortable writing experience, I don't know if you're going to get better than the Falcon, Brian. I really don't. It is just a beautifully smooth writing experience, and it's consistent. The only downside, in my opinion, is that it's insanely difficult to remove the nib and the feed. If you do get it gunked up and you do need to give it a little bit of toothbrush action, you cannot get a grip on that thing.
It's tough to get a grip. It's because
I've done it, but
you got that swoopy feed. There's no grip.
There's nothing to grip, and I've done it, but I don't like how much I have to grip it. That freaks me out because it's such a delicate nib. It's delicate gold nib, and so that's the only downside, And as much as I don't love the mechanism of the Con 70, Brian, it would be nice if the normal Falcon could take the Con 70. I don't know why they made the metal Falcon just a hair longer so that it could take the Con 70 and the regular one can't.
That is a good question.
That irks me just a little bit because you could just, syringe fill the Con 70 and you would have a little bit of extra ink capacity. But for me, the Falcon doesn't get enough love for just its normal riding experience. Just a little bit of bounce, because I honestly wouldn't use it for any sort of flexing. I just like the feel of it, and I think it is a tremendously delightful experience. Speaking of the Metal Falcon, recently I remembered that we used to have a brown Metal Falcon, Brian. Do you remember that thing?
That was a thing.
It was. And really, you've had 10 anniversaries to provide me with, to reward me with a brown Metal Falcon, and I just, don't know why that hasn't happened.
Reward you? Where's my reward for putting up with you for 10 years?
All right. But that's it.
You haven't always been such a diehard, like, I must have every brown pen. I feel like
it's kind of new.
That's like the last couple of years thing.
No, it is the last couple of years.
We had that brown pen.
Well, you know what? I think I'll tell you what the first one was. The first brown pen, it started with the brown Diplomat Excellence. Like, I don't even know if we carried that one.
Why
I think it was when
that's like not even.
I don't know, man. It was love at first sight.
Isn't that just like a flat brown? Like, it's not even.
No. The Excellence has this gravity to it. It has this majesty, and the brown was extra majestic. But I remember seeing that pen. I think that Ken brought it by when he was like saying, "Hey, you want to carry Diplomat?" And I saw that. I'm like, "Oh, that pen." And then,
oh, okay. Yeah. That is that's a nice looking brown.
Yeah, it is a nice looking brown.
I was thinking it was like flat fuddy-duddy looking brown. No, I don't think
we picked that one up. I think when we launched Diplomat, we said no to that one, and the Excellence just didn't do well anyway. But
yeah, we were like, this thing looks like a polished turd.
That was the first one. That was the first one. Actually, no. It was the brown Vanishing Point.
I
like that one. I liked that one a long time ago. Anyway,
that one is more of just a straight up plain brown.
It is.
The Excellence has a little more shine. It's got a little more
Excellence.
Yeah,
Excellence really knocked me off my socks, out of my socks, whatever.
Knocked you off your socks.
Anyway, I've also been writing with my 3 new seasonal inks, Brian.
Oh.
So I've been writing with Season's Greetings by Diamine, Winter Miracle by Diamine, and Noel, also by Diamine. And I will say that I am loving Winter Miracle, even though it has a little bit of shimmer. It has a lot of sheen, and it doesn't have a ton of shimmer, Brian. It's not clogging the VAC 700.
Is it just a little hint of shimmer, like a gentle shimmer?
It is a gentle shimmer, yep.
A light dusting, yeah.
That's right, just like a Winter Miracle. After a weekend, it takes a little bit to get going, but nothing severe. Just some time and a little bit of light shaking.
Okay.
But the Season's Greetings is okay. It's a little dark in this pen, so it doesn't show up the color a lot. It's like really dark, but I also kind of like that because it could be professional. And then the Noel, I like the color, but I picked a Sailor extra fine nib to put it in, so I'm not getting any of that sheen that it's famous for. So in retrospect, instead of matching it with my red pen, I should have just picked a nib that it performed better in. So that's on me. I was obsessed with going red on red.
You know these things, but sometimes you have to remind yourself, and you're like, maybe it'll be different this time. You're like, no.
Yeah, I shouldn't look for sheen and an extra fine from Japan.
Yeah. It takes a lot to make that happen. It's, Yeah, very cool.
Please talk about this pen that you put on the notes here, Brian. What the heck?
Do you even understand anything that I put in the notes? I
I remember this brand, but this is like, why?
I don't know. You know what? Okay. So I have a lot. I don't even know how to set this up. So I have a lot of prototype and prospective pens that we, get to test or could carry, but we're just not sure, and all these types of things. Generally, we don't talk about these things a lot because it just confuses everybody. We often don't have a lot of great information. We're just trying to initially vet them, and by the time we actually talk about them in something like a Pencast, then people get half information and they email our team, and our team is like, the heck are they talking about? And they have to come back and ask me, and it just creates a lot of confusion. But that said, I'm just going to do it anyway. So
I'm confused already. Congratulations.
I don't even know how involved you were in any of this. This is a couple of years ago. So basically we met with, it all began when we met with Atoya, which is the U.S. distributor for Sailor. So we were, reestablishing relationships with them. Obviously excited about Sailor and Tatcha and some of the other things, Penlux and stuff, and some of the other stuff they do. Well, they have their own kind of like in-house pen that they developed. And we're like, well, this is interesting. We'll kind of keep this on our radar, maybe see how it goes. It's not like a bullseye type pen for us, but we thought it was interesting. And I've just like had it around, my house for a couple of years. And I just pulled it out the other day and I was like, maybe this is something. I literally don't know if there's anything anybody gives two hoots about, but I thought I would at least talk about it in the open format of the Pencast. I was like, maybe
you're killing me. What's the pen?
So, it's kind of two different things. So I got to talk about it a little bit. No. I'm not trying to overly complicate it, but it's not the simplest thing to explain. But once I do, you'll make sense. So the actual pen itself, Drew, you may remember this. Do you remember the Platignum Tix? Do you remember this pen?
No, I remember the Platignum Studio.
So the Platignum Studio we carried. The Platignum Tix, which is, I get what they're saying, maybe ticks, like a tick mark like you would make, but ticks are like the things that give you diseases and stuff like that.
It's T-I-X,
T-I-X-X, I think.
Oh, good.
It's just really confusing, and it sounds like the tick, like the bug that gives diseases and stuff in this area, and like that is just not an appealing name. But anyway, it's like a Pilot Varsity. So it's a disposable fountain pen. It's plastic. It's, the whole body's filled like eyedropper sort of fill. It's got a pretty plain nib, one nib size, that kind of thing. They sell it in blue and black. We already had the Varsity, so we were like, well, we'll just stick with the Varsity. We never picked up the Platignum Tix. So that is not the actual pen I wanted to talk about, but so Itoya has a version of the pen that's very similar to this. It's a disposable pen, and I actually don't have the disposable pen cap part.
Yes.
This is, how you have the Sherpa, which is like a metal body that goes around a Sharpie. So like the inside, like the actual pen part is disposable and you can do that. But like the Sherpa, we've never carried it, but I've like seen it around and stuff. But you got like the metal shell that's made to like dress up, your disposable pen. So Itoya has a pen called the Blade, which is in effect very similar to that Platignum Tix. The dimensions are close as well. Very similar to a Pilot Varsity, which we do carry, though the dimensions are slightly different. I'll talk about that in a second. So essentially you have the Blade, which the Itoya Blade is a pen we could carry. It's very similar to the Pilot Varsity in a lot of different ways. It looks slightly different, but it's a disposable pen. It's not that different. They have a couple different colors and so on. But the shell body that goes around it kind of dresses it up. It kind of fits in there. You screw the back on. It's got a little spring in the back there, so it kind of holds it in place, and it's a nice like brushed aluminum. It looks pretty classy. It's called the Paper Skater. So the Paper Skater Galaxy, I guess, is maybe the black one or something. I don't know. I don't know all the details because, again, it's a perspective thing and I only researched it so much. But, it's cool. It makes it like a very robust pen. But these disposable pens like the Varsity and the Itoya Blade and all that, they actually write really well. Like they punch above their weight class, to go with a boxing analogy. And so to me, it's not like, oh, it's just a crappy pen with a nice body. It's like, no, it's actually a very decent writing pen with a large ink capacity. But if you wanted a nicer kind of like dressing for it or a more durable body, you can still have the disposability, interchangeability of the base pen, but you have a little nicer kind of like capsule to carry it around in. So that's the Paper Skater. Now, we don't carry the Itoya Blade, nor do we carry the Platignum Tix. So for us, it was like, well, if we do this Paper Skater thing, like I've already had to explain too much here.
It's so weird.
It's meant to be a very simple concept. And I think like in office supply stores and stationery shops and stuff like that, you can have them out and it's like a little easier to grasp. But like over video here, I'm like having to way over explain everything. It's just a disposable pen with a nicer shell that you can put it in. That's basically, I should have just said that from the beginning. But because we don't carry the two pens that it's more made to fit, I have to way over explain it. But I did find that it will actually fit a Varsity. The Varsity itself is a little shorter. The body is a little shorter. So when you do it in there, if I were to just screw it right on, then, kind of like shakes around a little bit, just like maybe 3 or 4 millimeters. So what I did just to be like, well, I wonder if I just shove something in there. So I just like balled up a wad of tissue and like, if I shove that in the back, then that fills up the extra space and then it works just fine. And I can pull the tissue out if I change the pen. So you can hack it to be whatever, or you could put a longer spring, whatever. So still fits in there. But like the important part is like the diameter is the same. The seal seems to be close enough to where I can still cap it and it feels totally normal if I jam that little, tissue in there. But that's just like one more thing to have to explain to people. It's like so many hacks now at this point. I have no idea. So anyway, the concept is, I don't know, it's something. There's, I've seen this with like the Sherpa. Granted, we don't sell Sharpies. This is definitely a little more in like the office supply and the art supply space than what we typically deal with for like hardcore fountain pen people. So this is why we didn't pick up the pen a couple of years ago. It's an interesting concept, but the MSRP on this is $39.99 or something like that. So, with a street price kind of discount, like the $32-ish range, comes with the pen, the disposable pen inside there, which is like $4 or so. But, it's like, I'm thinking about like we had the Platinum Preppy and then we had the Platinum Plaisir, which it
kind of reminds me of the Plaisir. Yeah.
Yeah. It's got kind of that vibe, but it's like twice as expensive as a Plaisir. Yeah. So it's like, to me, it wasn't a bullseye. The concept is interesting. I just don't know if it has mass appeal and it's a lot to explain. So anyway, I guess felt like explaining something very kind of overly complicated, but this is the kind of stuff that we sometimes get into when we're testing products and we're like, I don't know, like, how do we even get feedback on this without over explaining? And then we can't really get it in people's hands and get feedback unless it's a whole thing. And I don't know, we'll kind of see. And then we just kind of never revisit it. But I picked it up and I used it, and I partly am talking about it because the actual writing of the pen, I had not picked up this pen and used it in probably 2 years or almost 2 years. And when I uncapped it and used it, it started right away.
What?
So that was very impressive. And I have had experiences like that with these disposable pens, like the Varsity is the one that we carry the most. And I've had similar experiences with the Varsity. They just, as long as, they just stay capped and there's so much ink in there, they just never really dry out. And they're just extremely reliable writers and surprisingly smooth and consistent and stuff like that. So part of it is like, I don't know why the Varsity doesn't sell better than it does, because it sells okay, but it's not like, I don't know, I guess people get more excited about the nicer looking pens, which makes sense. But like, I don't know, these disposable type pens are just such great pens to give new people that don't know anything about fountain pens. Cause it's like, here, literally take this pen and write with it like a normal pen. You don't have to learn anything about anything else. And it's like, wow, this feels really smooth. And this is kind of nice. Like that is the quickest way to fuel inject the fountain pen writing experience. You can sit with somebody with like a really nice pen and kind of coach them and talk them through it. Like a, TWSBI, and here's how it feels. And they're like, oh, okay, they kind of get there. But if you're literally just like, here's a pen, like good luck out in the world trying to navigate this on your own. Like these disposable pens are just the safest and easiest way to do that. So I'm a big fan of them, but we don't sell gobs and gobs of them. But I was interested, like, would this help get this into more people's hands? I don't know. Cause now you're talking about a more premium price for a disposable thing. Maybe it's like, jack of all trades, master of none. I don't know. I'm just curious to get feedback on it. So I've had good experiences with the actual writing of these disposable pens, but I don't know how I feel about the nicer dressing of them. So I kind of wanted to just talk about it a little bit to get some feedback from you all, our very dedicated, turkey hammock approaching audience here as we get towards the latter part of our Pencast. So let me know what you think in the comments. Please don't ask my team about it. Don't email everybody because they will not have a clue what you're talking about. Because Drew, as much as he's been here and is close to me, had no idea what this thing was. And
I remember now.
Yeah, it's jogging your memory. We didn't talk about it like super in depth.
I didn't remember the Platinum Ticks. That I had no idea about. But I remember the blade. I remember the blade.
Platinum Ticks.
Sorry, yes, Platinum Ticks. I do remember playing around with the paper skater. That thing's weird. I don't know if I love it or hate it. I started off hating it, but then you start talking about it. I'm like, ooh, that's actually cool. But now I'm thinking
if it had flat tops, do you think you would love it more?
No.
Anyway.
No, I think it bothers me.
Fair enough.
But I kind of like it too.
I know, it's kind of, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about it. It's very unique. I don't know. I'm very mixed. I would love y'all's feedback on it, especially given the price. That is a very important factor. I think if that thing was $20, it would be like, I could get excited about. But it's like
$40 is a lot. Like I could get.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about brushed aluminum with anodizing and stuff. Like, I understand why it costs that, but
you could also get an Eco or a Safari.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, is the benefit, is the value there?
Yeah,
I don't know.
That's a tough one.
It's a tough one. It's a brainer. It's not a no-brainer. It's a brainer. All right. Moving on. Let's talk about what's happening. Oh, my gosh. We got some things happening. Y'all, this will be an interesting one.
We got some things happening.
I'll let Drew kick it off.
So I got my fireplace redone at home. So that was great. And then, so we got some like stone put in because it was this old 90s looking wood thing. So that got ripped out, put some stone in there, some white stone. But the wall was also kind of like this yellowy off-white that was there when we bought the house. So that didn't look good against the white. So it was like
power clashing going on there?
It was not, the white stone wasn't contrasting. So we were like, let's paint this wall gray. So I painted this weekend.
Hey,
did not make a mess, so didn't get any on the dog like I did last time. So hooray for me. And actually, she got it on herself. It wasn't my fault. She got near something she should have got on.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that went well. Hooray for that. Speaking of the dog, and a duck apparently. So my remaining dog. Sadly, I only have one corgi these days, but little toy mallard playing with the dog upstairs in the hallway. And I'm throwing it around, running back and forth. This dog's really bad at playing, by the way. My previous dog, Ollie, like he fetched. And Dinah is kind of dumb and just kind of followed him around barking. So what she does is play bad ball, which means I throw the ball and she runs at it and barks at it. And then I try to get it away from her. And if I'm constantly trying to take it from her, she'll kind of play the ball, but she's bad at it. So you have to be really engaged with her to play because she just doesn't know what to do. She's so dumb. But to be fair, the previous dog kind of hogged the toys.
She's a sweetheart, but
she is. She's delightful and much well behaved than the previous dog too. So it's she balances it out. But anyway, got this duck. I'm playing with her, tugging it back and forth, trying to get her like excited, like oh come get the duck, because you have to engage with her because otherwise she's just like I don't know what this is. So as I am a sometimes overly energetic individual, I'm playing around with this duck, swinging it around, and I just swing my head as hard as I possibly can into the side of a door frame. So I have this nice, let's see, where is it? Right there. I got a nice, head wound. And I fell over. I'm like, oh my God. And my wife's like, what'd you do? I was like, I just slammed my head against the wall with my entire body's upper torso strength, trying to play with the dog, with a stuffed duck. So that was fun. Did that, and I painted. Oh, also we started watching Succession, season 2, because we had watched the first. It's an HBO show with Brian Cox and a couple other actors. You would probably know him. He was in Troy. He played Agamemnon. He was in at least one of the X-Men movies. He was in he was in Braveheart a while ago. He was like the uncle that
I saw Braveheart.
He was the uncle at the beginning with like the one eye. Anyway, you know him if you saw him. He's super famous. But anyway, the show is just impeccably acted. Every performance is stunningly good, and I hate it. Like, it's such an amazing show. It's so well done, but I hate every character. It's kind of like Ozark, where you never want to watch it, but then at the end of the show, you're like, that was really good, but I don't want to watch another one.
I know what you mean. I've watched Ozark. You're like...
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's so good.
You're like, none of these characters are likable.
No, God. And then some of them
all make me uncomfortable.
I am impressed with how how they have made some of these characters so awful. Like I'm impressed with how much you've made me hate this person. Like, congratulations. I've never felt more uncomfortable or more cringy looking at this one character. His name's Tom, by the way. Like, he's like the worst thing ever on screen. Like,
oh wow, jeez.
Just like if you just were to wrap up every cringy, most uncomfortable, most selfish, awful thing you know about every person, just rolled it into one just terrible person. Like, man, that's Tom.
Wow.
I think his name's Tom.
Wow. So it's like really well done, but you don't enjoy the content matter.
Oh God, it's so weird. I don't know. And there's too many shows like that now. Like, where
I feel that way. This may be a little controversial. I feel that way about a lot of Quentin Tarantino's stuff.
Yeah, no good people in those
really
movies.
Well done, but I don't really enjoy the content of many of his movies.
Yeah, I can understand that. I love Tarantino movies, but I can totally understand that because
I haven't seen a lot of them, but I'm like, wow, this is a really creatively told story. But
right.
This is like a miserable subject matter. Like, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. It's kind of one of those, but it's still good, and we're still going to watch more. And that's it. Yeah, that was my weekend. What about you?
Watch it uncomfortably. Oh gosh,
I have a mixed bag. I know a little bit about what you've been up to recently, but I'm still curious.
I've had a mixed bag myself. We all go through seasons of our life where things are going great, and you're like, yeah, man, this is really awesome. Then we go through other periods where like, wow, this is really kind of hard, and obviously with pandemic life that many of us are feeling, especially lately, it's like, okay, there's a lot of things that maybe aren't as exciting to have to deal with. So, you look forward to those moments of reprieve, maybe where you can watch a show where you don't like any of the characters and, really enjoy that somehow. And you can smack your head into door frames and stuff, to make your dog feel good. So yeah, we, you look forward to these little moments of downtime. Well, then sometimes these like things you try to do to like help like revive yourself and, lift your spirits and all that, they just like go sideways and you're like, okay, yep, more just kind of like challenging stuff. Well, that's kind of where I've been a little recently. So for one, this didn't happen in the last week, but it happened the week prior, and I didn't talk about it because it was still a little raw, but unfortunately our pet hamster Hammy passed away. And we knew this is our first, it's a hamster. Okay. Like,
it doesn't matter. A pet's a pet. There's a lot of love there.
Well, a pet's a pet, but like, yes, we got Hammy at the kind of like in the early stages of COVID life. Like, so as a pandemic had already started, we were at home a lot. We got the hamster, and it was just like, a little fixture kind of in the home there. Like, the kids didn't really hold him that much. He really didn't like his ball. He really didn't run around very much in his cage. He was kind of a lazy hamster, but we kind of loved him for that, and he would get excited about apples and sunflower seeds. He liked to eat, basically, so he was kind of our fat, lazy hamster, but he was kind of a cute little fuzzball.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah. Very, very fitting to our lifestyle, where he didn't really demand much of us, and he literally never, ever tried to escape. Like, I forgot, left his cage open a couple of times. He didn't leave. He was just in his bowl, and we'd like open the cage, and he would just like kind of come out, wait for us to like hold him a little bit, and then he'd like poop in our hands, and we'd kind of put him back, and never try to jump, never, just a non-ambitious hamster, which was fine for what we needed.
Great.
But oh my gosh, did the kids talk about him and drew pictures of him, and like they just loved on this hamster. So we were like, hamsters only live to be like 2 to 3 years, maybe max. We're like, this is gonna be rough. Like, when this hamster goes, the kids are gonna have a hard time with this. And Rachel had kind of a good sense. Honestly, Rachel kind of ended up being the one who was most attached. She was around him a lot and all that kind of stuff. And like, Rachel had a couple of hamsters growing up, and her mom was the one who like got the most attached to the hamster, and she kind of found the same thing with herself too. But anyway, so we love the hamster. He's just a little bright spot in our life. But she could kind of tell that he was slowing down and just not doing so great. And so she had a very motherly instinct that she was like, I don't think Hammy has much longer. And it was, the weekend that we had like a big snowstorm. So we were kind of snowed in a little bit, and we basically just got to kind of spend some like good last couple of days with Hammy. And then like, the last night, I'm not going to get too graphic here. I mean, he was fine. He passed in Rachel's hands. She just like woke up early, and she just knew that like it was going to happen soon. So she just like held him, and he was very snuggly and all that kind of stuff. And then he just kind of passed, and I had to go like wake up the kids and be like, yeah, it happened. Joseph just got home. Hey, buddy. So he, it was, I had to go get the kids. That was the hardest part of it, honestly, was just seeing their reactions. Anybody who has a pet, but it's still, it was honestly like, I'm thinking like as the dad, as the parent and whatever, I'm like, okay, yes, we need to feel this, but I'm also like, this is a teachable moment. This is a family moment that we can, share in this memory together. I can help teach my kids about grief and how to feel this, how to walk through this. And so even though it was a very sad event, it was a very, gratifying event to go through together as a family. And we had lots of talking and healing, and it was a rough couple of days there for everybody. And we had a lot going on just in other areas of our life, but we had, that was kind of rough. So it was a rough couple of days, and then like, it was a little raw a little bit. And now we're at the point where we like, have mostly just very fond memories, and we're still smiling as we remember certain things and that kind of stuff. And we're actually talking about getting another couple of hamsters, like probably a pair of hamsters now, because, just especially seeing like, okay, the kids, they had a hard time, but they had an exercise in resilience now. Like they can talk about it. They're not like shying away from it. They're getting excited about potentially another one, or one or two and something like that. So I don't know. It was a very difficult time, but also very therapeutic, and was a good kind of lesson for the kids and experience for the family. So we have lots of cute pictures and all that. They like we buried him. We did a little cardboard box. The kids drew like pictures of him on the box. It was like super heartfelt. And we like had a whole thing where we like talked about, things we loved about him and all that. And there were a lot of tears. I'm like, Yeah. I think it's a hamster, like, but for me, it was like the kids and Rachel especially was like, that was the hardest part for me, but it all worked out okay. And, we're
some of our listeners might actually be the owners of a piece of Ellie Goulet's artwork that does feature Hammy. We give those stickers away in random orders. So
we have hundreds of pictures of Hammy. Ellie drew Hammy so many times. So it's like, that's kind of cool, little in memoriam there. But, it's like, no matter what, he's got a place in history in our family. And, we're going to just love that and enjoy that time that we had with him. Anyway, so that's super sad and depressing kind of stuff. But now on to the more ridiculous nonsense portion of what I've been up to lately. So this is very much like a no good deed goes unpunished kind of story. So, we've had quite a bit of winter weather here in Virginia, like a little more so than normal. We usually get like 1 or 2 snows kind of throughout the winter. And, usually kind of melts quickly, and then we get on with life. It's pretty temperate climate for the most part. Well, we've had a couple of weeks in a row here with some doozies, and also with a lot of rain. So like everything is completely soaking wet, and snow and just all this kind of stuff. So just a lot of time spent dealing with the weather and disrupting things, in addition to the pandemic and all these other holidays and all this stuff. Both my kids' birthdays are around this time of year. So there's just been a lot going on anyway. In addition to that, like I needed to help. My parents needed to move some stuff, and I'm like the able-bodied, strong-bodied person who has a pickup truck and a trailer. So whenever anybody needs to move something or have heavy things lifted, it's pretty much like, hey Brian, what are you doing next weekend or whatever. And so I don't do this for everybody, but for family and stuff like that, I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah, we'll make this happen. Well, navigating around the weather and all that kind of stuff, basically the Monday of this week, which was a holiday, we were close. I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, I can help you move some stuff. So, because I'm not using my trailer all the time, I don't park it like in our driveway, because then it's in the way of everything. So I park it, in the yard, like a little further back. Well, I had the truck, which is it's an F-250. Like, it's a pretty good sized truck. It's a big, heavy truck. And I went to just drive, and I drove into the yard with my head, and then I was going to, towards the trailer, and then I was going to just kind of turn and then back up to the trailer, right? Pretty simple maneuver. I've done this a whole bunch of times. So I go to turn into the yard, and the truck just will not go. And I didn't create any ruts or anything like that, but the ground was so wet that as soon as I stopped the truck, it literally just sunk down several inches, into the mud. So the yard, unbeknownst to me, right where the tree line was, where I had the trailer parked, was firm. But as soon as I went outside of the tree covering, it was just swamp. It's just a total swamp in the yard. And it surprised me because it's not always like that, but I guess we've just had so much rain and snow and stuff. It was a total swamp. And because we're not I got a lot of family up in New England. Well, it's wintertime, it's cold, the ground kind of freezes and it's hard. But here in Virginia, we'll get snow and ice, but then it warms up. So you get this freeze thaw kind of thing. So the ground never really freezes, but you still get the junk, the snow and the ice and all that kind of stuff. So I ended up with this this light snow covering over swampiness. So I had no indication that I was going to get stuck in this stuff. But I did, and I tried for an hour and a half to get out, delayed everybody's plans who was trying to help move some stuff, and I had to just bail. I had to take the trailer. It's like a 10-foot utility trailer, so it's kind of heavy, but you can sort of move it by hand if you need to, which is what I should have done in the first place, which I had. So I basically had to leave the truck where it was. I was still late holding up everything. And then I had to take the trailer by hand, go and drag it over to the driveway, and then hook it up to I have an SUV. So I took that, and, it took a couple extra loads, to move some stuff, and okay, it's fine. Still made it work. Well, then I came back, tried to move the truck, and I don't know if you've ever seen, I was being so cautious. I was like, I don't want to do anything stupid. I don't want to get this thing stuck. I'm going to just take slow and gentle approaches on everything. But every single thing that I tried went completely sideways and went as wrong as it could. It was just in my 20s, yeah, I could see being whatever, I'll just gas it. And, you dig a big rut and you're like, oh gosh, I guess I've torn everything up. I've done that stuff before, and I know not to do that anymore. So I took a very cautious approach. But literally every step of everything I tried just went as bad as it could. And I was like, okay. So what happened is I've seen this trick, the classic, I've seen this on YouTube and it seems to work for some people. Let me see if this could work for me. So this trick where if you're kind of stuck in the mud, and again, I was only 2 or 3 inches down. I wasn't really deep down in there, where you take a 2x4 and you strap it through your wheel well and then strap it around the 2x4. So you're effectively strapping this big bar, kind of across the outside of your tire to give you extra traction. So my truck, it's only 2-wheel drive. So I put it on the back 2 wheels that are going to be spinning so that I could get additional traction. And I was like, hopefully this will be enough to get me some grip, and then I can kind of go out. So by the time I actually did that, this was after I helped with some of the moving, and I'd already been doing stuff for 10 hours that day. I was pretty tired and it was completely dark. So I try to do this thing and I hear it and I'm like, I can kind of hear it going, but I don't really feel myself moving. So then I stopped and I went back there and I was like, oh, the axle of the truck was sitting on the ground. Basically what had happened is the 2x4s that I had strapped acted like a power shovel and just dug huge chunks of this mud and just flung it everywhere. And all it did was dig the truck down. It did not move an inch except down. So now
were the 2x4s not wide enough?
Maybe not. Maybe I should have done it differently. I don't know.
Oh my God.
But it did not give me any traction whatsoever. All it did was dig a giant pit for each of my wheels to fall down into. And now the back of the truck is resting on the ground. And I'm like, well, I just made this so much worse. So then Rachel had the idea. And what I had to do was basically get a car jack and go and put a board under the car jack up the back of the truck, put jack stands, then jack up the wheels, because the wheels, they have suspension on them. So if you jack up the frame of the truck, the wheels themselves were still down in the hole that they had dug for themselves. So I had to jack this all up in multiple stages. It's freezing cold. I'm laying down in the mud, doing this for 5 hours on Monday night with this, after I've just done this horrific nightmare of a fail trying to get traction on my tires. So I finally jacked the thing up. I'm sticking like 6-inch thick pavers, like just trying to put anything in these holes underneath these wheels to get it to where it will not like sink back down. I literally had like 6-inch pavers that I put under it. And then once I put the weight of the truck back down on it, the entire paver sunk down into the mud, and I had to do it again just to get enough firmness. It was ridiculous. I was like, what is happening here? I've never had anything like this happen.
No, just leave it at that point. Cover it up with more dirt and just it's a hill now.
Let the squirrels take it. Just put it back to nature.
Yeah,
had a good run.
It's like,
so anyway. So yeah, long story short, after doing all that, eventually what I was able to do was, with much time and patience, I was able to jack up like each corner of the truck, firm it up underneath there, and then put like long, like 2x10 pieces of lumber under the wheels, and then give it like a firm track to be able to pull it on. Because my concern was, if I put all this stuff under the wheels, I was going to pull it and then like it would just do the same thing like 3 feet further back. So I needed like long tracks, and that's what I tried to do. So I did that, and then what I ended up doing is I ended up doing this. I have like snatch blocks and pulleys and all this kind of stuff because I do a lot of
snatch blocks.
Yes. Oh, this is a.
All right, that's fine. Just pretend like I know.
Thing. I'm gonna.
Pretend like I know what a snatch block is.
Just look it up. There's a Smarter Everyday video about snatch blocks. Yeah, look it up. It's really exciting. No. It's basically a pulley. So it's a pulley that you can use, but they're really, Drew, I'm telling you, snatch blocks, they will change your life.
What am I gonna do with that?
You can do anything you want with snatch blocks. It's incredible. It's one of the simple machines. It's a pulley. It's incredible. So I'm only going to go into as much detail in this since we're having a conversation.
It's too late for that, Brian.
Since we're having a conversation with our audience. If y'all are at 2 hours in on a pen podcast, for sure, you're like, yeah, I'll learn about pulleys and mechanical advantage systems. Why not? Anyway, so this is like, I've messed around with some of the stuff, like pulling trees. Like trees are extremely heavy, believe it or not. Probably already knew that. That's a very obvious statement, but I've like felled some big trees and had to pull them out of the mud and things like that. You learn a little bit about like ropes and pulleys and these types of things when you're doing that kind of stuff. So I was like, I can probably apply some of that experience and knowledge and tools to getting my truck out of the mud. It's essentially a giant log on wheels at this point. So that's exactly what I did. I set up a rather complex pulley system to give me the mechanical advantage that I needed to get this very heavy truck out of a completely muddy pit. And I did it very successfully. And the truck is now rescued, and it is now sitting safely in our driveway. But what I ended up doing, I got to share with you the pulley system that I created for this thing because it was very complex and kind of ridiculous. So this thing of what I ended up creating, if you can visualize here. So I had the truck, which is up here, stuck in the mud, right? And so I was trying to go this direction with it. I had my tractor, which I was using to pull, right? So what I needed to do, basically, if you just hook up a vehicle or something like that directly with like a single chain or something like that, you got a 5,700 pound truck, you're trying to pull 5,700 pounds that way. That's really heavy. And especially in the mud, there's probably a lot more weight actually that you're trying to deal with. So what you do is you use pulleys to create compound pull. So you have to pull further, but it's a more powerful pull. So if you have like one pulley, like you have a pulley that's attached to the thing, you anchor it, and then you have yourself pulling, it's half the effort. So it's a 2-to-1 pull. So you can pull with half the effort, but you have to pull twice as much rope, right? So that's kind of how mechanical advantage works. Well, when you get into really complex stuff, you can get really powerful pulls. So what I ended up doing, I'll try to explain it. So I had a pulley that I had attached to the back of the truck. This is in reverse here. I had some big trees that I was anchoring to because I was right at the wood line, thank goodness. So I was able to anchor another pulley here and then come out this way. So I had basically a 3-to-1 advantage at the start of the truck. So I connected that other pulley here to another pulley system to compound it, right? So then I anchored it to another tree and then another rope. So that created a 2-to-1 advantage, which then coupled with a 3-to-1 made a 6-to-1 pulling advantage. And then that one I had anchored to the tree with another pulley, and then I had a pulley on the back of the tractor, which gave me a 3-to-1. Multiply that times the 6-to-1, that gave me an 18-to-1 pulling ratio using 5 snatch blocks, 3 trees, truck, and a tractor. And it worked beautifully. I did not even have to have Rachel in the truck. Rachel was helping me in parts of this process, not the laying down in the mud for 5 hours part of it. She was out there with me, making sure that things were safe and it was all good.
Chivalry's not dead.
But it ended up being so effective. I just put the truck in neutral, didn't even have to have it on. And I was able to just winch it and just gently pull the thing right out of there, slowly, carefully, safely. And I was like, heck frickin' yeah. Because Drew, you know me, I am a tool junkie. And
I was just thinking maybe we should do some sort of fountain pen collaboration with Harbor Freight or something like that.
Right, or Home Depot or something. But Rachel goes out to the shed and she's like, why do you have all these chains and metal cables? And she's like, what is a snatch block? She's like, I don't even want to know. Just don't even tell, I don't even know. She's like, why do you need 7 of these? And I'm like, right here. This is why. Because granted, I caused this problem for myself. I'm also, for any of you who are smarter out there, I think I calculated that I set up the pulleys and I got out there and I was so tired and it was dark and all that. I was like, I'm just going to set up these pulleys and I think I'm going to create this advantage. I think I calculated the mechanical advantage right, but it's a very complex one that I created. So if I'm wrong on the 18-to-1 ratio, let me know in the comments, but I think I'm right. I'm not sure. Anyway, it worked swimmingly. It was between 9 and 10 hours of my time, mostly in the frozen dark, dealing with this truck. I'm like, in retrospect, I probably could have just called a tow truck and had them pull it out and done other things. But I learned a lot and I got a good story out of it. And it just gave me an appreciation for a muddy yard and just being aware of your surroundings. So I'm going to never drive my truck into that part of the yard again. And, I view it as an exercise in patience. And, Rachel and I we bonded, especially the morning that I was holding everybody up and I got it stuck initially and I was trying to get it out and it wasn't working. Rachel got to see a side of me that she doesn't often get to see. It was like, in the movie A Christmas Story when the dad is fixing the furnace and he's like, frazzle. It was, it may have been a bit like that.
Excellent.
And it was very cathartic for me to just kind of vent out all of my frustrations of the world as I was dealing with that. And I felt much better after that. And I was like, Rachel, I'm sorry. You did not see the best of me in that moment. And had a bit of an existential moment where I was like, why am I doing any of this? These are all things I've caused for myself. This truck, this trailer, I bought these things. This is the yard. I drove the truck. I did literally, I have no one to blame. What can I blame the weather? No. This is all my fault. I could only be upset at my own ignorance. And that was a good experience for me to go through that. I'm 37 now. I lived a fair amount of life. I'm not going to say I'm super aged wisdom here. I've done a lot in my life at 37 and to still be so humbled by something so simple. It was good. It was good for me because it helps me remember that there's still a lot to learn every day. And anyway, that was my stuck truck experience. Whew. But man, pulleys.
Speaking about exercises and patience, thank you everybody.
Yes.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Cool, man.
That was entertaining. Yeah, I just googled snatch blocks. They're just pulleys.
They're pulleys, yeah. A snatch block is a pulley that can split in half so that, they're used for towing and vehicles and stuff like that. There's all different types of pulleys, but snatch blocks are so cool. So cool, man. Get them in your life. They will help you in a jam many times.
I don't feel like I've needed a snatch block
What I've definitely found is that now that I have a knowledge of them, I get myself into more situations where I find I need them.
In that case, I will never buy a snatch block. If you've taught me anything, Brian, the moral of this story is to not buy tools ever because you'll use them.
It's just we're looking at the same jewel. I'm seeing it through one facet and you're seeing it through another, right? Anyway. Let us know in the comments.
I'm
Where do you
glad
stand?
everything is
Are
okay.
y'all like pro snatch block or like?
Oh, no, I'm not anti-snatch block. I'm just.
I don't know. I don't know.
To your logic, like you would not. None of this would have happened if you did not own any of this. So
I have no one to blame but myself. This is almost everything.
don't buy trailers. Don't buy pickup trucks. Don't buy chains. Don't buy snatch blocks.
It's the same thing with like running a business and like leadership and having kids and all that. You're like, no one forced me to do any of these things. Like I chose all these things. Therefore, I cannot have any right to complain about the results and the consequences that come along with these things that I've chosen to do, because that's part of the package. So yeah, these are all my life choices.
You know what though? You also like the dad in the old man in the Christmas Story. He also got really excited when his tire popped, and he got to change the tire.
I'm totally that.
That's
I'm
also
totally
you.
That
Yeah.
guy.
So yeah, that. He views it as like a challenge, an opportunity to fix and overcome adversity.
Right there with you. I'm totally the
adversity.
one that like, oh, you like, this tree fell. Let me grab my chainsaw. Like let me grab one of my 3 chainsaws. Can I help cut this up? Do you need it moved? Like I get so excited about dorking out about all my tools. Anyway, yeah, the obsession is real in all aspects of my life. It's not just fountain pens. It's in many other areas.
You're not alone.
There you go.
I'm sure somebody in the comments will like want to know more about this, and I will ignore them.
Smarter Every Day, his video on snatch blocks, explains it very, very well. Got me really excited about them, and that was what kicked it off. Anyway, company updates. We'll make this very brief. Kind of the same thing we've been dealing with everywhere else, just COVID life. The COVID stuff is very real, continues to be real. Thankfully, we've been able to, remain operational, though with many, many disruptions. So, yeah, everybody's in health, various states of health, but everybody's still moving forward.
No one's dead.
That's good. Yes. There's just a lot of stuff going on in everybody's life, and I realize that, and not to make light of that. Thankfully, we've not had serious complications with any of our team members, and if we did, I doubt I'd really be able to share much about it anyway. But everybody's hanging in there. We're still getting stuff done. It's taking a little longer. We have a leaner team than we normally would, but everybody's in pretty good spirits. But gosh, it's real. It's kind of just everywhere, and it's more impacting us directly than it has really at any point through this 2-year pandemic thing. That combined with bad weather and like threats of, like we're supposed to Thursday and Friday and Saturday this week. It's like threats of ice storms and all that and more stuff. And like all those beautiful trails I've talked about, Drew. Rachel and I just walked the trails today. There's like 10 trees that are down across the trails.
Oh, darn. You're going to have to chop up some more trees. How terrible for you.
I'm weirdly excited about it, but I'm also like, when am I going to do all this? Because I already have so many other, like I just spent 9 hours getting my truck out of the yard. Like that was
I don't think that's going to be a regular thing.
Yeah. So anyway, we just had a lot of crazy weather in Virginia.
Yeah.
But,
I was impacted by the supply chain today, Brian. The supply chain issues.
Were you?
Yes.
Did your Talk Boy that you order on eBay get held up? Or
no, but I am waiting on Splash 1984 VHS. That is hung up in the mail. Splash has not arrived, which I'm a little upset about.
Wasn't that
Wasn't
that Tom Hanks's breakout movie Splash?
It was.
That was his first one, right?
It was.
Yeah.
You betcha. David Morse was originally cast for that part, but he turned it down.
Wow.
And decided to become George Washington in the John Adams miniseries instead. Anyway, neither here nor there.
Still a good move.
Yeah, whatever. Anyway, supply chain issues. I was at Bojangles today, Brian, as a distinguished gentleman of
trying to end on a biscuit, of course, I'm sure.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I asked for Bo's special sauce, which is like this spicy ranch. It's really good. And they said they were out.
What?
Yeah. And I said, well, I just don't want any sauce then. Well, you don't want ranch? I was like, no, I don't want ranch. Don't give me your ranch. I want my Bo sauce.
That was a non-special ranch.
I know, right? So that was upsetting. However, supply chain recouped. They were out of medium cups, so I got a large sweet tea. So,
Oh. Did they upgrade you to the large at no charge since they were out of medium cups?
Yes, they did.
That's classy of them.
Yeah, so the
yin
and the yang of the supply chain challenges.
Okay, you know what? We are all having to walk through this in different
it was
ways.
difficult. It was difficult.
I admire your bravery.
I'm brave.
With everything that you're enduring through this event.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. It's good to know.
Now, maybe I'll let you know when Splash shows up.
Yeah, definitely. I remember, I haven't seen that movie in a very, very long time.
Yeah, same here.
I remember being largely confused about a lot of it. I think I saw it when I was a kid. It's not like an inappropriate movie for kids, but it's like, I don't know. It's
the ending's confusing.
It's not a kid movie. Like when I was a kid, I saw Cocoon. I didn't really understand what was happening.
No.
But like, and I haven't seen these movies in 25, probably close to 30 years. I don't know. I was probably too young to see it. Not from like an inappropriate standpoint, but just like I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen them since. So I like have vague memories of some of these movies. But yeah, Splash is one of them. It stuck out to me. I was like, that was the first time I saw Eugene Levy in anything. And I was that dude's got some eyebrows. That's what I remember about him. Big glasses and eyebrows.
Fun fact I learned about Eugene Levy this past week. He was originally cast as Louis Tully's cousin in Ghostbusters 2.
Really?
There are deleted scenes.
Wow.
They actually filmed it.
Wow.
I believe his name was I can't remember his name. Anyway, but yeah, he was, because I think that he was originally the choice for Louis Tully's character, but then it went to Rick Moranis instead. But yeah,
Rick Moranis was a pretty solid.
Oh, he killed it.
Solid
Yeah, absolutely.
Pick. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that whenever whatever obscenely expensive special edition for the new Ghostbusters comes out.
Yeah, there you go. They're going to do it. I'm sure.
Oh, they are. That's where I learned this.
Nice.
But no, for real though, I'm not going to buy it. It's like $275. It's insane.
But you want it though. I mean,
if someone gave it to me, but nah, I'll be all right. I've seen that movie enough.
You've definitely seen that movie enough.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Anyway, company's doing okay. Disrupted, but moving forward like a truck stuck in a swampy front yard.
Like a tidal wave of bowling balls.
A tidal wave of bowling balls. We might be having to overcome some obstacles, but we are pressing forward.
Yeah.
And that's all we got. Speaking of pressing forward, y'all listened to probably one of the longest pencasts we've ever done. I keep thinking
this is the longest.
We can do it shorter, and I'm like, how does it just keep going? Because I talk too much. That's why. It's not a mystery. Anyway, we're going to wrap this thing up. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Please leave us some feedback about how we're doing and why we need to go shorter. We keep trying to find the limits, but y'all are like, no, we literally can't get enough. I don't know how that's happening, but anyway. We need more questions for the show, so please ask us them in comments and places. You can email us also at pencast@gouletpens.com if that's the kind of thing you like to do. And subscribe to all of our channels and share it with other people who might also be interested in too much information about things that don't really matter that much. And my random fun facts that we're going to end with today. So, if you've ordered from us, less so lately. We used to use a whole ton of bubble wrap. Now we are using less because we're trying to be a little more eco-conscious. But bubble wrap was originally invented to be used as a decorative 3D wallpaper. It was meant to be a decorative wall covering in like I forget when it was, 1920s or something like that. But yeah, and then it was like kind of accidentally like, this actually kind of works for like wrapping things in it and keeping it safely. But no, it was meant to be an aesthetic item. Isn't that crazy? Could you imagine accidentally inventing something as life-changing as bubble wrap? Makes me want to just invent random things. I don't know.
That is interesting. I have seen it used on like, sci-fi sets. They'll like put it up on the wall, spray paint it like, metallic or something like that to, give it and it was also used as part of the seatbelt straps in Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back.
Get out of here. Really?
When they're in the snow speeders wrapping around the AT-ATs.
Yeah? That's bubble wrap?
If you look at it's the little bubbles, not the big bubbles.
Yeah,
And I believe they're popped maybe, but yeah, they're on the straps.
Wow.
So they show up in cost-effective sci-fi film scenarios from time to time.
I mean, you could say that in those scenarios...
Not like I'd know that, because that would make me a nerd.
Well, Drew, I think anybody who has watched these, that ship has sailed. You're not hiding anything from anybody at this point. That's cool. There you go. Fun fact about bubble wrap. Anyway, that's all we got for you this week. Be sure to watch again if you're into this ridiculousness. We're having fun. So anyway, thanks for watching.
Thank you so much.
And right on.